Hey, friends. Tonight we gently explore the quiet beginnings of a rather remarkable friendship, one that blossomed between a deeply peaceful soul and a creature of the wild woods. You find yourself now, perhaps nestled in your favorite quiet spot, the day's hustle slowly fading like the last rays of sunset. Imagine, if you will, a small, unassuming hermitage, tucked away just so where the loudest sounds are the chirp of a curious cricket or the sigh of the wind through ancient trees. We're journeying to a time when life moved at the pace of the seasons, and sometimes, just sometimes, something wonderfully unexpected would happen. You might find this oddly calming, this journey back to simplicity, to a story that whispers of patience and gentle understanding. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy these calm tales. It truly helps these sleepy stories find others who might need a peaceful moment. And while you're at it, if you feel like sharing, let us know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your little corner of the world. It's always lovely to see how far these quiet words travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a soft fan for background hum, and let's ease softly into tonight's spiritual journey together. The air around the hermitage is cool and smells of damp earth and pine needles, a scent that immediately soothes the mind. You can almost feel the soft, yielding moss under your own feet as you mentally approach the small, stone dwelling. It's not much more than a single, cozy room. Really, with a sturdy, weathered wooden door that's seen countless seasons and a couple of small, deep-set windows, just enough to let in the shifting, dappled patterns of sunlight that filter through the dense canopy overhead. This is the chosen home of our saint, a man who found the bustling, clattering world just a little too, well, bustling. He preferred the company of profound stillness, the quiet, almost inaudible hum of prayer that seemed to resonate within his very bones, and the rustling, whispering conversations of the ancient forest that cradled his sanctuary. His days, you see, are marked by a gentle, predictable rhythm, a cadence as old and reliable as the hills that rise like sleeping giants in the distance. Before the sun even considers nudging the dark edge of the horizon, he's awake, not with a jolt. Mind you, there are no jarring alarms or urgent beeps in this tranquil neck of the woods. Unless, of course, you count the overly enthusiastic rooster from the distant, sleepy village, who sometimes gets his pre-dawn timings a bit mixed up and starts his crowing a good hour too early. Much to the silent amusement of the forest creatures, our hermit, let's call him Brother Silas in our minds for now, rises with a quiet, almost imperceptible sigh, a gentle stretching of limbs that have known the honest ache of good work, and the patient endurance of long hours spent in kneeling contemplation. The floor beneath his bare feet is cold, smooth stone, a little daily reminder of the simple, unadorned life he has so willingly embraced. Many spiritual traditions, from the stoic desert fathers and mothers of early Christianity, who sought wisdom in the stark emptiness of the wilderness, to Buddhist monastics in their serene mountain retreats, have long valued such profound simplicity, seeing it as a direct pathway to clearing the mind for deeper, more meaningful contemplation. It's not about deprivation for its own sake, not a punishment, but rather a conscious removing of the clutter, both the physical trinkets and the mental chatter that can so easily distract from the divine whisper, that still, small voice. His very first act, before any other, is prayer, a silent, intimate conversation held in the pre-dawn gloom, a time when the world itself seems to be holding its breath. You can picture him, can't you, kneeling by a small, worn wooden bench, smoothed by years of contact, his hands calloused from tending his garden, clasped loosely before him, his head bowed in humility and devotion. The words are soft, perhaps not even spoken aloud, more like heartfelt intentions, aspirations, and gratitude rising like the morning mist that often clings to the valley floor. There's a profound, almost tangible peace in these sacred moments, a sense of deep connection that needs no grand, echoing cathedral, no shimmering ornate trappings, no booming organ music. It's just him, the hushed quiet of the coming day, and his unwavering, simple faith. Then, as the first delicate sliver of sun crests the distant peaks, painting the eastern sky in hues of soft rose, pale lavender, and gentle gold, he moves with unhurried grace to his small, beloved garden. It's a wonderfully higgledy-piggledy affair. This garden, not one of those perfectly manicured, ruler-straight show gardens you might see in glossy magazines, but a thriving, happy little patch of earth, bursting with life in a certain charming disarray. He tends to his vegetables, his beans, his lettuces, his soon-to-be plump tomatoes, with a gentle care that borders on reverence. Each tiny seedling, each unfurling leaf, each ripening fruit is a small, perfect miracle to him. You can almost hear him murmuring quiet, encouraging words to the struggling seedlings. Perhaps even a soft, humorous admonishment to the particularly stubborn weed that seems to believe it has every right to that prime, sunny spot. This intimate connection to the earth, to the ancient cycle of sowing, growth, and harvest, is a prayer in itself, a form of active meditation. It's a tangible, daily reminder of life's incredible resilience. Its quiet, unyielding insistence on flourishing. Lesser-known tales from various monastic orders often speak of saints and wise hermit who found profound spiritual insights while engaged in such humble, earthy tasks. One particular charming, though perhaps apocryphal, story tells of a contemplative monk who claimed to have finally understood the true nature of divine patience and forgiveness simply by watching a tiny, determined spider meticulously rebuild its intricate web each morning after the heavy dew had collapsed it. It's these small, unassuming, everyday wonders that fill his world with quiet joy. Breakfast is as simple and wholesome as the man himself. A piece of coarse, dark bread, its crust satisfyingly chewy, perhaps some sweet, sun-warmed fruit plucked from his own garden or a nearby wild berry bush, and cool, clear water drawn from the little spring that bubbles up with a cheerful gurgle not far from his hermitage. He eats slowly, mindfully, savoring each bite, each texture, each subtle flavor. There's no rush, no impending deadline to meet. Other than the gentle, natural unfolding of the day itself, many scholars and seekers of wisdom still find a deep sense of wonder in how these solitary figures, these hermits and recluses, maintain such profound contentment and inner peace with so very little, at least by our modern, often cluttered, standards. Perhaps the true richness they discovered was found not in the abundance of possessions, but in the vast, uncluttered, and peaceful space they so carefully cultivated within themselves. The heart of the morning might be spent in quiet study, poring over ancient, sacred texts by the soft, flickering light of a single tallow candle, or, when the weather is kind, by the generous sun streaming through his small, westward-facing window. The pages of his few precious books are worn thin, the ink faded in places from centuries of careful reading. But the wisdom they hold remains timeless, ever fresh. He reads not to accumulate dry facts or to win theological debates, but to nourish his soul, to find comforting echoes of his own spiritual seeking in the words and experiences of those who walked similar solitary paths long before him. Or perhaps, on another day, you'll find him mending his simple homespun robe, the needle moving with a slow, practiced, rhythmic precision, each stitch a tiny act of mindfulness, a small meditation in itself. It's rather funny, isn't it, when you think about it, how we often seek out grand, dramatic gestures, big, earth-shattering moments of revelation, when sometimes the most profound and lasting peace can be found in the utterly mundane, the everyday tasks when they are performed with a full and attentive heart. Maybe he even has a slightly lopsided wooden stool he's been meaning to fix for about 3 long years now, always putting it off for a more suitable moment. Saints, after all, are wonderfully, relatably human too. Sometimes the small, inquisitive creatures of the forest become his unassuming companions. A particularly cheeky red squirrel, bold and bright-eyed, might venture close to his open door, its tiny nose twitching, clearly sizing him up, perhaps wondering if a crumb of that delicious-smelling bread might accidentally be forthcoming. Birds, a vibrant tapestry of finches, robins, and wrens, will serenade him from the branches overhead, their intricate songs a natural, ever-changing symphony. He doesn't try to tame them, not in the way one might try to own a pet, to confine or control it. It's more a delicate relationship of mutual respect, of shared space and quiet acknowledgement. He moves slowly, deliberately, speaks softly, if at all, and they, in turn, seem to sense the profound harmlessness, the gentle, benevolent spirit that resides within this quiet man. You can easily imagine him smiling softly, a crinkling at the corners of his eyes, as a bold little robin, its chest a splash of flame, lands on his windowsill, tilting its head as if asking a silent, philosophical question. These are his neighbors, his fellow inhabitants of this serene, secluded corner of the world. The afternoon often brings a slow, contemplative walk through the deep, embracing woods, his footsteps making only the softest sound on the mossy, leaf-strewn path. He knows these woods with an intimacy born of long association. Every ancient, gnarled tree is an old friend. Every hidden, sun-dappled glade a familiar sanctuary. Every bubbling, musical brook a source of refreshment. He notices the subtle, almost imperceptible shifts in the light as the sun journeys across the sky. The way the leaves dance and shimmer in the gentle breeze. The rich, earthy scent of pine needles and damp soil. This isn't just a casual stroll for exercise. It's a walking meditation, a profound way of immersing himself completely in the breathtaking beauty and enveloping tranquility of creation. He might pause for long moments to examine a delicate, almost translucent wildflower bravely pushing its way through the dense undergrowth, or to listen intently to the distant, echoing call of a cuckoo, its voice carrying a hint of ancient mystery. There's a deep, unspoken understanding, a silent communion between him and this wild, untamed place. It's a sanctuary, not just for him, but for all the myriad creatures, great and small, that call it home. He knows, with a certainty that settles deep in his heart, that even the smallest, most insignificant seeming beetle, the most fleeting, brightly colored butterfly, plays its vital part in the grand, intricate, and perfectly balanced tapestry of life. This deep, abiding reverence for nature is a common, golden thread woven through many diverse spiritual paths. The idea that the divine, the sacred, can be perceived and experienced directly in the awesome beauty and wondrous complexity of the created world. You might think of the ancient Celtic saints and their profound, mystical connection to the sacred groves, the whispering trees, and the holy, healing wells, or perhaps the indigenous spiritual traditions from around the globe that see and honor spirit in every rock, every river, every blade of grass, and every living being, as evening gently approaches, casting long, soft shadows that stretch and yawn across the forest floor. There's another cherished period of prayer, of quiet, heartfelt reflection as the world outside his hermitage prepares for its nightly rest. The sounds of the forest gradually change, the bright, busy daytime chorus giving way to the softer, more mysterious calls and rustlings of the night. He might light a single, slender candle, its small, steady flame a tiny, unwavering beacon of warmth and stillness in the gathering. Velvety dark, his dinner is as simple and nourishing as his breakfast. eaten with the same mindful gratitude and unhurried pace. There's no hint of loneliness in his chosen solitude. You understand, it's a deliberate state, a rich and deeply fulfilling quietude. He has his thoughts, his prayers, his intimate connection with the natural world, and a deep, abiding sense of unshakable peace. He probably wouldn't be much fun at a noisy, boisterous party. Mind you, you can almost picture him standing quietly in a corner, looking slightly bewildered and overwhelmed by all the fuss and clamor, but here, in his own element, surrounded by the gentle rhythms of the forest, he is utterly, peacefully complete. His bed is a simple pallet, perhaps of fragrant, dried straw or carefully woven reeds, covered with a coarse but comforting blanket. Sleep comes easily, a welcome friend, after a day lived with such gentle intention and quiet purpose. The forest murmurs its ancient, soothing lullabies outside his small window, the soft, resonant hoot of a distant owl, the gentle rustle of leaves in the night breeze, the distant, sighing whisper of the wind through the tall pines. These are the peaceful sounds that cradle him as he drifts off into slumber, his mind calm and clear, his heart at peace. This is his world, a world of profound, uncluttered simplicity and deep, unwavering spiritual connection, a world entirely undisturbed, as yet, by the silent, patting paws and watchful, amber eyes of a certain large, furry creature that roams the deeper, wilder, more remote parts of these ancient, whispering woods. For now, his greatest daily excitement might be the unexpected discovery of an unusually plump and edible mushroom, or perhaps a shy, graceful deer venturing a little closer to his hermitage than usual. His life is a quiet, consistent, and beautiful melody, a gentle, resonant hum of existence in perfect, unassuming harmony with the wild and wonderful world around him. And it is into this deep, established, and cherished peace that a new, unexpected, and perhaps even a little unsettling note is about to be introduced. You can feel the established rhythm, can't you? The gentle, predictable pulse of Brother Silas's days, each one a near-perfect echo of the last, filled with quiet contemplation, humble work, and a deep, abiding connection to the ancient forest that serves as both his sanctuary and his cathedral. The squirrels continue their cheeky explorations. The birds still sing their intricate, melodic serenades, and the sun faithfully traces its arc across the sky, marking the passage of time with its shifting, golden light. But now, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift begins to ripple through the serene air, a quiet undercurrent that starts not in the heart of the hermitage itself, but further out, in the small, unassuming village that lies nestled a few miles away, just beyond the furthest, deepest reach of the familiar, well-trodden forest paths. The village, let's call it Oakhaven in our minds, is a place much like Brother Silas's hermitage in its love for simple routines, though perhaps a little more prone to the occasional burst of communal chatter and the friendly, clattering sounds of daily life. It's a cluster of sturdy, thatched roof cottages, their walls often whitewashed and adorned with climbing roses or cheerful, rambling honeysuckle. A small, stone church with the slightly crooked, lichen-covered steeple stands at its heart, its bell, a little rusty but still strong, chiming out the hours with a familiar, comforting clang. The villagers are, by and large, good, honest, hard-working folk. Farmers tilling their fertile fields that stretch out beyond the forest edge, shepherds tending their flocks on the gentle, rolling hillsides, and a few skilled artisans, a blacksmith whose rhythmic hammering provides a steady beat to the village day, a weaver whose loom clacks with a comforting, busy sound, and perhaps a kindly baker whose shop fills the morning air with the irresistible aroma of freshly baked bread. Their lives are intertwined with the forest, a source of firewood, foraged berries and mushrooms, and a place for quiet, reflective walks, though perhaps not quite as deep or as solitary as Brother Silas's own. For generations, the forest has been a known quantity, a familiar, sometimes awe-inspiring, but ultimately benign presence. There are tales, of course, whispered around crackling winter fires, of mischievous wood sprites and shy, elusive forest spirits. But these are mostly the stuff of gentle folklore, stories told more for entertainment and a touch of thrilling mystery than out of genuine fear. The real creatures of the woods, the deer, the badgers, the foxes, the myriad birds that are well known, understood, and generally pose no threat. They are simply part of the natural, harmonious order of things. Many cultures around the world have similar relationships with their local woodlands, viewing them as sacred spaces, sources of life and mystery. The concept of a sacred grove, a patch of forest considered holy and left untouched, appears in numerous ancient traditions, from the Celts in Europe to various indigenous communities across the globe, recognizing that some wild places hold a spiritual significance that transcends mere resource. But recently, a new whisper has started to circulate, a different kind of story, one that carries with it a faint, almost imperceptible chill, a subtle undercurrent of unease that wasn't there before. It begins, as these things often do, with fleeting, uncertain glimpses, half-seen shadows at the very edge of vision. A shepherd, out late tending to a stray lamb near the forest edge, might mention, almost casually at first, seeing a pair of unusually bright eyes, glowing faintly in the deepening twilight. Watching him from the dense, dark tree line, he might brush it off as a trick of the fading light, or perhaps just a particularly large and curious fox. But then, a farmer, checking his fences at dawn, discovers unusually large, unfamiliar tracks in the soft earth near his chicken coop. Tracks that are definitely not those of a fox, nor a badger, nor even the occasional wandering dog from a neighboring farm. They are bigger, much bigger, and deeper, as if pressed into the soil by a creature of considerable weight and power. These isolated incidents, at first, are easily dismissed, attributed to overactive imaginations or the natural propensity for small, close-knit communities to occasionally embroider a good story. You can almost hear the good-natured, slightly skeptical banter in the village tavern, the gentle teasing directed at those who claim to have seen or heard something out of the ordinary. Old Man Hemlock's been at his berry wine again, methinks. One might chuckle, whilst another adds, aye. Or perhaps it was just young Thomas's prize-winning pig got loose again and went for a moonlit ramble. It's all very light-hearted, very normal. However, the gentle, well-meaning dismissal of these initial reports is a common human response to things that don't quite fit our established understanding of the world. There's a comfort in the familiar, and often, the first instinct is to try and make the unfamiliar fit into a known, less threatening category. But then, the reports become a little more frequent, a little more consistent. A woodsman, venturing deeper than usual in search of prime timber, comes back pale and shaken, swearing he saw a large, gray, shadowy form moving with silent, unnerving speed through the dense undergrowth, too swift to be a deer, too silent to be a bear, which are exceedingly rare in these parts anyway. He didn't get a clear look, he admits, but the impression of it, the sheer size and stealth, left him with a prickling unease that settles deep in his bones. He describes it not as a monster, not yet, but as something powerful, something wild, something that doesn't quite belong in their familiar, generally peaceful corner of the world, or at least hasn't been seen for generations. If ever, then more tangible evidence begins to appear. A prize sheep from a flock grazing near the forest edge is found slain, not mauled in the messy, frantic way a pack of wild dogs might attack, but killed cleanly, efficiently, with an almost surgical precision that speaks of a skilled, Solitary hunter, the shepherds are deeply troubled. Their dogs, normally brave and boisterous, seem strangely subdued, whining softly and refusing to venture too close to the tree line, their hackles raised, their noses twitching nervously at some unseen, unheard, but clearly perceived threat. There's a sense of unease that starts to ripple through the village, a quiet, creeping anxiety that subtly alters the familiar, cheerful rhythms of daily life. The laughter in the tavern is a little more subdued. The stories told around the evening fires now carry a slightly more serious, more apprehensive tone. The children who once played freely at the forest's edge, building their little stick forts and searching for fallen birds' nests, are now kept closer to home, their adventurous explorations curtailed by anxious parental warnings. Stay within sight of the cottages. Now, their mothers will say, their voices a little sharper, their eyes scanning the dark. Mysterious line of trees with a newfound, worried watchfulness. It's not panic, not yet, but it's a definite, growing concern. The forest, once a friendly, familiar neighbor, now seems to hold a deep, unspoken secret, a hidden presence that watches from the shadows with unseen eyes. Many scholars and folklorists note how tales of mysterious creatures often arise in communities living on the border between the cultivated and the wild, the known and the unknown. These stories can serve as cautionary tales, metaphors for the untamed aspects of nature, or even reflections of communal anxieties. The village elders, men and women whose memories stretch back through many long seasons, gather to discuss these unsettling developments. They search their collective recollections, trying to recall any old tales, any forgotten lore that might speak of such a creature. Was there ever talk of wolves in these woods? Some faintly remember their own grandparents mentioning, in hushed, almost mythical tones, stories of a time long, long ago when, yes, perhaps the great gray wolf did indeed roam these ancient forests. Before the land was so extensively cleared for farming, before the villages grew and spread, but those were just stories. Weren't they tales from a far-off, almost legendary past, like the stories of dragons or slumbering giants? Surely, not something to be concerned about in their modern, more settled times? It's a common theme, isn't it? How easily we forget the wildness that still exists, sometimes just beyond our own garden fences, just outside the comforting glow of our village lights. We build our neat, orderly lives, and sometimes we forget that nature, in its full, untamed grandeur, still holds sway in the unlit corners of the world. One evening, as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in dramatic streaks of orange and fiery crimson, a young woman, returning late from visiting a sick relative in a neighboring hamlet, has the most chilling encounter yet. She's hurrying along the familiar path that skirts the edge of the woods, her heart already beating a little faster than usual in the fading light, when she hears it. A sound that makes the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. It's a howl, not the yapping of a fox, nor the mournful baying of a lost dog. This is a long, low, deeply resonant howl, a sound that seems to emanate from the very heart of the ancient forest, a sound filled with a primal wildness, a lonely, untamed majesty that speaks of vast, open spaces and untrodden paths. It echoes through the still evening air, seeming to hang there for a long, breathless moment before slowly fading away, leaving behind an almost palpable silence. A silence now heavy with a new, undeniable certainty. She doesn't see the creature. She doesn't need to. The sound itself is enough. She arrives back in the village breathless, her eyes wide with a fear that is no longer vague or speculative, but sharp and real. Her story spreads like wildfire, confirming the growing apprehension, solidifying the vague fears into a much more tangible, much more concerning reality. There is indeed a wolf in the woods, a large one, by the sound of its powerful voice, and it is not just passing through. It seems to have made the deep, dark heart of their familiar forest its new hunting ground, its solitary, silent domain. The secret is out. The forest, their old, familiar friend, now harbors a presence that feels both ancient and alarmingly new. A creature of legend made real. Its silent, padding paws now treading paths uncomfortably close to their own, and the gentle, unsuspecting Brother Silas, in his quiet hermitage, still lost in his peaceful prayers and simple routines, is blissfully unaware that the deep, ancient secret of the forest is about to become a very prominent and potentially very challenging part of his own carefully ordered, solitary world. The hushed whispers from Oakhaven are slowly, surely, beginning to carry on the wind, heading inexorably towards his unsuspecting, peaceful little clearing. The whispers from Oakhaven, initially soft and tentative, soon grow into a more discernible murmur, a current of unease that travels along the well-worn paths, carried by anxious farmers returning from the village market, by worried shepherds seeking solace or perhaps a little bit of shared courage in numbers, and even by the slightly more adventurous children who, despite their parents' warnings, still can't resist venturing just a little way into the familiar, yet now subtly altered, woods. You can picture the scene in the village square, can't you? The usual cheerful bustle is now overlaid with a thin veneer of anxiety. Heads are bent closer together in conversation. Voices are a little more hushed, and glances are frequently cast towards the dark, imposing line of trees that marks the forest edge, as if expecting to see those unsettling amber eyes staring back at any moment. The fear, at this stage, is still a gentle one. As fears go, it's not the stark, heart-pounding terror of an imminent, visible threat, but rather a persistent, gnawing worry, a sense of disquiet that settles over the village like a fine, persistent mist. It's the kind of fear that makes people jump at unexpected sounds, that makes the shadows seem a little deeper, a little more menacing, that makes the familiar hoot of an owl sound, for a fleeting, unnerving moment, like something else entirely. There's a well-documented psychological aspect to communal fear, where anxieties can spread and even amplify within a close-knit group. It's not necessarily irrational. Often, it's a survival mechanism, a way for a community to heighten its collective vigilance in the face of a perceived threat. But it can also, sometimes, lead to an exaggeration of the danger, or a focus on less productive, fear-driven responses. The primary concern, naturally, is for the livestock. Sheep are a valuable commodity, a source of wool for clothing and meat for the table. The loss of even one or two to a predator is a significant blow to a farming family. The thought of a large, capable wolf systematically working its way through their flocks is a deeply troubling prospect. You can imagine the shepherds, their faces etched with worry, reinforcing the flimsy wooden fences of their sheep pens, perhaps bringing their flocks closer to the village at night, a practice they haven't needed to resort to for many, many years. They probably spend their nights fitfully, starting at every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, imagining the silent, stealthy approach of the forest's new, unwelcome resident. It's a little humorous. In a sad sort of way, how quickly a single, unseen creature can disrupt the deeply ingrained sense of security that has been built up over generations. One might almost feel a tiny bit sorry for the wolf, if it just going about its wolf business, entirely unaware of the consternation it's causing. Almost. Then there's the concern for the children. Oakhaven is a place where, until recently, children enjoyed a considerable amount of freedom, roaming the fields and the forest edges with the happy-go-lucky confidence of youth. Now, their world has shrunk. The woods, once a playground full of adventure and discovery, are now tinged with a hint of the forbidden, the dangerous. Parents find themselves issuing stern warnings, their voices laced with an anxiety they try, not always successfully, to conceal. Don't you dare go near the forest today. Young Thomas, A mother might call out, her tone sharper than usual, her eyes scanning the tree line with a worried frown. And Mary, you stick close to the cottage. Do you hear me? This curtailment of freedom, this imposition of new, unseen boundaries, is perhaps one of the most tangible signs of the village's growing unease. There are countless folk tales from around the world, like Little Red Riding Hood in its various iterations, that use the motif of a child venturing into a dangerous forest and encountering a wolf, often serving as cautionary tales about obedience, the dangers of straying from the known path, and the deceptive nature of some outward appearances. These stories, while often softened for modern sensibilities, tap into ancient, primal fears about the vulnerability of the young and the ever-present wildness that exists just beyond the fringes of civilization. The men of the village, too, feel the weight of this new concern. They are, by tradition and necessity, the protectors, the providers. The presence of a large predator so close to their homes feels like a direct challenge to their ability to keep their families and their livelihoods safe. There are hushed, serious discussions in the evenings. After the day's work is done, some of the younger, more hot-headed men might talk bravely of forming a hunting party, of tracking down this unwelcome intruder and dispatching it with spears and sharpened axes. You can almost see them, puffing out their chests a little, their voices a bit too loud, trying to project a confidence they don't entirely feel. Others, older and perhaps a little wiser, counsel caution. The forest is deep and treacherous, they argue, and a cornered wolf is a dangerous adversary. Besides, they are farmers and shepherds, not seasoned hunters of such formidable game. Their skills lie in nurturing life, not in taking it, especially not in such a direct and potentially perilous confrontation. This internal debate, this weighing of options between aggressive action and cautious restraint, is a common human response to fear and uncertainty. Many spiritual traditions emphasize the importance of discernment in such situations. The ability to distinguish between a genuine threat requiring decisive action and a fear that might be clouding sound judgment. The wisdom often lies in finding a response that is both effective and ethically sound. A path that doesn't simply react to fear but seeks a deeper, more considered solution. And so, inevitably, their thoughts, their hopes, their pleas for some kind of intervention begin to turn towards the one person who lives closest to the heart of the perceived danger. The one person who seems to possess a different kind of strength, a different kind of connection to the wild world. They start to talk about Brother Silas, the quiet hermit in the woods. He is, to them, a figure of some mystery, a man set apart by his solitary life and his deep devotion. They respect him, in a slightly odd, perhaps even slightly fearful way. He's not quite like them. With their everyday concerns about crops and markets and village gossip, he dwells in a different realm, a realm of prayer and stillness, a realm that seems to touch upon the sacred, the mystical, lesser-known hagiographies. The biographical accounts of saints often depict these holy figures as having a unique, almost supernatural rapport with wild animals. Stories abound of saints taming fierce beasts, not through force, but through a kind of spiritual magnetism, a radiating aura of peace and harmlessness that even the wildest of creatures seem to recognize and respond to. Think of Saint Francis of Assisi and the famous story of his sermon to the birds, or his gentle pacification of the wolf of Gubbio, a tale that might, just might, have some rather interesting parallels to our own unfolding sleepy story. The villagers don't necessarily expect Brother Silas to march out and slay the wolf with a divinely guided spear. That's not his way, and they instinctively know it, but perhaps they reason his prayers might have a special potency. Perhaps his very presence in the woods, his aura of sanctity, might somehow discourage the wolf, persuade it to move on to wilder, more remote territories, or maybe Just maybe, he might have some ancient, forgotten wisdom, some special knowledge about how to deal with such creatures. Knowledge that has been lost to them. The more worldly village folk, you can imagine them, can't you? A small, hesitant delegation. Perhaps the village elder, the worried shepherd whose prize ram is now missing, and a concerned mother, clutching her child's hand a little too tightly, making the journey, with some trepidation, towards the hermit's secluded dwelling. They would approach his small, stone hermitage with a mixture of hope and nervousness, their voices hushed, their footsteps hesitant on the mossy path. Their pleas, when they finally managed to articulate them, would be simple, heartfelt, and tinged with that gentle, pervasive fear. They would speak of the unsettling tracks, the missing sheep, the chilling howl that echoed through the twilight. They would talk of their sleepless nights, their anxious days, their concern for their children's safety. They would look at this quiet, unassuming man, his face calm and weathered, his eyes deep and thoughtful, and they would pour out their worries, hoping against hope that he might offer them some comfort, some guidance, some small glimmer of a solution to this growing shadow that has fallen over their once peaceful lives. They aren't demanding action, not yet. They are appealing to his perceived wisdom, his spiritual authority, his unique position as a man who lives in harmony with the very wilderness that now seems to threaten them. Brother Silas, listening patiently, his gaze steady and kind, would absorb their words, their fears, their unspoken anxieties. He would see the genuine distress in their eyes, the tremor in their voices. And as he listens, you can almost see the subtle shift in his own quiet world. The peace of his solitude is about to be gently, but irrevocably, disturbed, not by the growl of a wolf, but by the worried whispers and earnest pleas of his human neighbors. The forest's deep secret has now been laid at his doorstep, a problem he cannot, and likely would not, ignore. His calm demeanor, his deeply ingrained peacefulness, is about to be put to a rather unusual, and perhaps even slightly furry, test. Brother Silas, you see, is not a man easily ruffled. His life, so deliberately pared down to its essentials, has cultivated within him a profound sense of inner stillness, a quiet reservoir of calm that is not easily disturbed by the ripples of the outside world. While the villages of Oakhaven are caught in a rising tide of gentle fear and anxious speculation about the mysterious wolf, Brother Silas, in his secluded hermitage, continues his familiar routines, his days flowing with their usual unhurried, prayerful rhythm. However, the arrival of the worried delegation from the village, their faces etched with genuine concern and their voices trembling slightly as they recounted their tales of unsettling tracks, missing livestock, and that spine-chilling howl, does, of course, register with him. He listens with his characteristic patience, his deep-set eyes, usually fixed on some distant, contemplative point or the intricate details of a wildflower, now resting with gentle attentiveness on each speaker. He doesn't dismiss their fears, not for a moment. He doesn't offer platitudes or easy reassurances that it's probably nothing to worry about. He understands, with a quiet empathy born of his own deep connection to the natural world, that the presence of a large predator can indeed be a cause for genuine concern, especially for a community so reliant on the land and its creatures. He nods slowly as they speak, perhaps offering a simple, comforting gesture, a slight inclination of his head, or a soft, almost inaudible murmur of understanding. You can almost picture him, can't you? Sitting on his low, worn stool, his hands resting quietly in his lap, exuding an aura of peaceful solidity that, in itself, seems to subtly calm the agitated spirits of his visitors. It's rather like a sturdy, ancient oak tree in a storm. The winds may howl and the branches may sway, but the trunk remains firm, deeply rooted, unshakable. When they have finished their anxious outpouring, when the last worried word has been spoken and a heavy silence hangs in the small, sun-dappled clearing outside his hermitage, Brother Silas doesn't immediately offer a solution. He doesn't reach for a weapon, nor does he instantly promise a miracle. Instead, he seems to retreat even further into his own profound stillness. He might close his eyes for a long moment, his lips moving silently, almost imperceptibly. Is he praying? Is he listening to some inner voice, some deeper wisdom? Or is he simply allowing the weight of their concerns to settle, to be fully absorbed and understood before any response is formulated? This practice of quiet contemplation before action is a hallmark of many spiritual traditions. From the Quaker tradition of waiting for the inner light to guide their words and actions, to the Buddhist practice of mindful awareness before responding to a challenging situation, there's a deep cross-cultural wisdom in not reacting impulsively, especially when fear or strong emotion is involved. It's about creating a space for a more considered, more compassionate, and often more effective response to emerge, unlike some of the more hot-headed young men back in Oakhaven, whose first instinct might be to grab their pitchforks and hunting spears. Brother Silas's approach to this new, looping challenge is fundamentally different. His first recourse, his most trusted tool in any situation, is not aggression, not force, but prayer. He believes, with a simple, unwavering faith, in the power of gentle intention, in the subtle but profound efficacy of earnest supplication. He will pray for the village, for their safety and their peace of mind. He will pray for the anxious shepherds and their vulnerable flocks. And yes, remarkably, he will likely also pray for the wolf itself. Not for its destruction, you understand, but perhaps for its guidance, for its contentment, for it to find its own rightful place in the vast tapestry of creation, a place that doesn't bring it into harmful conflict with its human neighbors. This idea of praying for one's perceived adversaries, or for those who cause fear or difficulty, is a deeply challenging but profoundly transformative concept found in many faiths. It's a radical act of empathy, a recognition of the inherent worth and interconnectedness of all beings, even those we might find threatening or difficult to understand. It's a far cry from the U.S. versus them mentality that can so easily take root when fear is in the air. He might then speak to the villagers, his voice soft and calm, yet carrying a quiet authority that commands their attention, as he won't make grand promises he cannot keep. He won't claim to have any magical powers to banish the wolf with a wave of his hand. That would be silly, and Brother Silas is many things, but silly isn't one of them. He's far too grounded for such theatrics. Instead, he might offer them simple, practical advice, born of his own deep understanding of the forest and its ways. Perhaps he suggests strengthening their fences, not just with wood, but with prayer. Maybe he advises them to be more vigilant. Yes, but also to cultivate a sense of inner calm, to not let fear overrun their good sense. He might remind them, gently, that the forest has always been a place of wildness, and that living so close to it requires a certain respect, a certain understanding of its untamed nature. It's a little like having a very large, slightly unpredictable, but ultimately majestic neighbor. You don't necessarily try to control them, but you learn to live alongside them with wisdom and respect. He might also share a quiet story, a simple parable, perhaps about a time when another community faced a similar challenge, and how they found a peaceful resolution not through violence, but through patience, understanding, and a willingness to see the situation from a different perspective. There are many lesser-known tales within various faith traditions that speak of peaceful coexistence with creatures often perceived as dangerous. For instance, there are charming, though perhaps not widely circulated, stories from some Eastern monastic orders about monks who, through years of consistent, gentle kindness and the offering of food, managed to befriend even notoriously shy or aggressive wild animals, turning them into peaceful, albeit still wild, companions of the monastery grounds. These stories often emphasize the idea that true strength lies not in dominance, but in compassion and the ability to inspire trust. The villagers, listening to Brother Silas, might feel a subtle shift within themselves. His calmness is strangely contagious. His quiet confidence, not in his own abilities, but in the power of a more peaceful, more prayerful approach, offers them a different kind of hope, a flicker of light in the encroaching darkness of their fear. They may have come to him expecting a more direct plan of action, perhaps some talk of traps or tracking. Instead, they receive something far less tangible, yet somehow more profound. They receive an invitation to meet fear not with more fear, but with faith, with patience, with a willingness to trust in a wisdom that transcends their immediate anxieties. Many scholars of religion and psychology note the profound comfort and resilience that strong faith can provide in times of crisis. It offers a framework for understanding suffering, a source of hope, and a motivation for compassionate action, even when faced with seemingly insurmountable challenges. After the villagers depart, their steps perhaps a little lighter, their faces a little less etched with worry. Brother Silas returns to the deep quiet of his hermitage, but now there's a new focus to his prayers, a new intention woven into the familiar rhythm of his days. The wolf is no longer just a rumor, a distant whisper from the village. It is now a tangible presence in his awareness, a fellow inhabitant of his beloved forest, a creature whose path, it seems, is destined to intersect with his own. He doesn't feel fear, not in the way the villagers do. His is a different kind of concern, perhaps a more pastoral concern. He feels a sense of responsibility, not just for the well-being of the human community, but for the delicate balance of the forest itself, a balance that now includes this magnificent, yet potentially disruptive, new arrival. He doesn't immediately set out to find the wolf. That would be premature, perhaps even a little presumptuous. Instead, he watches, he listens, he attunes himself even more deeply to the subtle language of the forest. He pays closer attention to the behavior of the other animals, the sudden flight of birds, the nervous chatter of squirrels, the way the deer move with a new, heightened alertness. These are the signs, the whispers, that might indicate the presence, the proximity, the habits of the forest's unseen hunter. He observes the wind, the changing patterns of light and shadow, the places where the undergrowth is thickest, where a creature of stealth and power might choose to make its den or lie in wait. It's a process of gentle, patient reconnaissance, a gathering of information not through force, but through quiet observation and deep, empathetic listening. You can imagine him,
Can't you?
standing perfectly still at the edge of the clearing, and his eyes half closed, his whole being focused, not like a hunter stalking prey, but more like a naturalist, or perhaps even a shepherd, trying to understand the ways of a new, slightly wayward member of his widely extended, furry, and feathered flock. It's a rather humorous image, the idea of a saint considering a wolf as part of his flock, but it captures something of his all-encompassing, gentle compassion. His peaceful way is not one of avoidance, but of engagement, an engagement rooted in prayer, patience, and a profound, unshakable belief in the possibility of finding a harmonious path, even with those creatures that the rest of the world might too quickly label as simply the enemy. The stage is being set, not for a confrontation, but for a different kind of encounter altogether. The days following the villagers' visit settle back into their familiar, quiet rhythm for Brother Silas, yet with a subtle, underlying shift in his awareness. The forest, his constant companion, now holds an added layer of mystery, an unspoken question mark in the shape of a large, gray wolf. He doesn't actively seek it out. Not yet. There's no sense of urgency in his movements, no anxious scanning of the shadows. His approach, as always, is one of patient observation, of allowing things to unfold in their own time, in their own way. You can almost feel the quality of his attention, can't you? It's not a tense, focused beam, but a soft, receptive awareness, like a calm, still pool that reflects whatever passes over its surface. He continues his daily routines, the pre-dawn prayers, the gentle tending of his humble garden, the quiet mending of his simple robe, the slow, contemplative walks through the whispering woods. But now, his senses are perhaps a little more attuned, a little more open to the subtle signs that might indicate the wolf's presence. He notices, with a new, quiet interest, the places where the deer trails seem to suddenly veer off in a different direction, or the unusual silence in a patch of woods where the birds normally chatter incessantly. He might pause longer by a muddy patch near the spring, his eyes scanning the soft earth for any unfamiliar tracks, not with the intent of a hunter, but with the gentle curiosity of a naturalist, or perhaps, more accurately, a fellow creature trying to understand the ways of another. Many ancient monastic rules and spiritual disciplines emphasize the importance of cultivating such heightened awareness, not just of one's inner spiritual state, but also of the external world. The Benedictine tradition, for example, speaks of listening with the ear of the heart, a practice that encourages a deep attentiveness to God, to others, and to the environment. It's a way of being fully present in each moment, open to the subtle revelations that the world is constantly offering. One particularly still, sun-drenched afternoon, Brother Silas has taken one of his customary meandering walks, perhaps a little deeper into the woods than usual. The air is warm and heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. The only sounds are the gentle buzz of insects, the occasional soft chirp of a hidden bird, and the almost inaudible sigh of the breeze through the high canopy. He's not thinking about the wolf specifically. His mind is likely engaged in its usual quiet contemplation, perhaps pondering a line from a sacred text, or simply reveling in the profound, encompassing peace of the forest. He comes to a small, sun-dappled glade, a place he knows well, a favorite spot where the sunlight filters through the leaves in shifting, ethereal patterns, creating a sense of natural sanctuary. He often pauses here to rest, to simply be, and it is here, in this tranquil, familiar clearing, that the encounter happens. It's not dramatic, not sudden. Well, there's no crashing through the undergrowth, no menacing growl, no heart-stopping moment of confrontation. It's almost anticlimactic. In its quietness, he simply looks up, his gaze sweeping idly across the glade, and there it is, the wolf. Standing at the far edge of the clearing, partly obscured by the low-hanging branches of an ancient, gnarled oak tree, its form blending almost perfectly with the dappled shadows and the muted greens and browns of the forest floor. It's large, undeniably so, its coat a mixture of gray and brown, thick and shaggy. Its head is raised, its ears pricked forward, its intelligent, amber eyes fixed directly on him. For a long, breathless moment, neither of them moves. The world seems to hold its breath. The buzzing of the insects fades. The chirping of the birds ceases. There is only the profound, palpable silence of the forest, and the unwavering, mutual gaze between the man and the wild creature. You can imagine the scene, can't you? The sunlight filtering down, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the still air between them. Brother Silas feels no surge of fear, no jolt of adrenaline. Instead, a profound sense of recognition, not recognition of the specific wolf, of course, but a deeper, almost spiritual recognition of a fellow being, a creature of God, sharing this sacred, wild space. There's a quiet awe, perhaps, at its wild beauty, its untamed power, its sheer, magnificent presence. This kind of direct, non-confrontational encounter with a wild animal, especially a predator, is often described in spiritual literature as a moment of profound connection, a breaking down of the usual barriers between human and animal, cultivated and wild. There are lesser known Zen stories, for example, that speak of monks achieving a state of such deep meditation and harmlessness in the wilderness that wild animals would approach them without fear. Sensing their peaceful intent, the wolf, for its part, shows no immediate signs of aggression. Its stance is alert, yes. Watchful, certainly, but not overtly threatening. There's no baring of teeth, no low growl rumbling in its chest. It simply observes. Its gaze is intense, steady, unblinking. It's the gaze of a wild creature assessing a new, unfamiliar element in its territory, an element that doesn't fit the usual patterns of human behavior it might have encountered before. The loud, boisterous woodcutters, the fearful, scurrying shepherds, the distant, fleeting glimpses of villagers at the forest edge, Brother Silas, standing perfectly still, his demeanor utterly calm and unthreatening, his hands perhaps held loosely at his sides or gently clasped before him, presents a very different and perhaps very confusing picture. He doesn't shout. He doesn't make any sudden movements. He doesn't reach for a stick or a stone in assault. He simply returns the wolf's gaze, his own eyes filled not with fear or hostility, but with a quiet, gentle curiosity, perhaps even a touch of welcome. It's a silent, profound conversation, a meeting of two worlds, the world of human contemplation and the world of untamed wildness. Held in the still, sunlit heart of the ancient forest, many scholars who study animal behavior and interspecies communication note that direct, calm eye contact, combined with relaxed body language, can sometimes de-escalate potentially tense encounters with wild animals, signaling non-aggressive intent. It's a delicate balance, of course, as prolonged, intense staring can also be perceived as a challenge in some species. But Brother Silas's gaze, one imagines, is not challenging, but open, receptive, almost inviting, after what feels like an eternity. Though it's probably only a few long, suspended moments. The wolf makes the first subtle move. It's not towards him, nor is it a retreat. It simply shifts its weight slightly, its head tilting almost imperceptibly, as if considering, processing the strange, quiet human who stands before it with such unnerving, peaceful composure. Perhaps it lets out a soft, almost inaudible huff of breath, a sound that is neither a growl nor a whine, but something in between, a quiet exhalation of curiosity, perplexity. It's impossible to know, of course, what thoughts, if any, are passing through that wild, intelligent mind, but the tension, if there ever truly was any in Brother Silas's perception, seems to subtly lessen, to soften around the edges. Brother Silas, in turn, might offer the smallest, almost imperceptible nod of his head, a silent acknowledgement of the wolf's presence, a gesture of respect. He doesn't try to speak to it in human words. Not yet. He understands, instinctively, that the language being spoken here is far older, far more primal than any articulated speech. It's the language of presence, of intention, of the silent, subtle energies that flow between all living beings. It's a little bit like when you meet someone for the first time, and even before any words are exchanged, you get a certain feeling about them, a sense of their inner state. Animals, especially wild ones whose survival depends on accurately reading their environment, are often exquisitely sensitive to these nonverbal cues. Then, as quietly and unexpectedly as it appeared, the wolf seems to make a decision. It gives one last, long, searching look at Brother Silas, its amber eyes seeming to penetrate to the very core of his being. And then, with a slow, fluid movement, it turns, not abruptly, not fearfully, but with a kind of deliberate grace, and melts back into the shadows of the undergrowth, disappearing as silently and mysteriously as it arrived. One moment it is there, a tangible, powerful presence. The next, it is gone, leaving only the empty space, the lingering scent of wildness on the air, and the memory of those intense, unforgettable eyes. Brother Silas remains standing in the glade for a long time after the wolf has vanished, the profound stillness of the encounter still resonating within him. He feels a sense of wonder, of gratitude, perhaps even a touch of gentle amusement at the sheer, beautiful unexpectedness of it all. He doesn't feel triumphant, as if he has faced down a dangerous beast. That's not the nature of the encounter at all. It was a meeting, pure and simple, a moment of shared presence, of mutual, silent acknowledgement. In the heart of their shared home, he knows, with a quiet certainty that settles deep in his soul, that this is not the end of the story, but merely the beginning of a new, and perhaps even more extraordinary, chapter in his wonderfully boring, remarkably peaceful life. The forest has shared one of its deepest secrets with him, not in a threatening way, but in a moment of quiet, breathtaking revelation, and he, in turn, has offered it nothing but his own steady, unwavering, gentle calm. The silent, sun-dappled encounter in the glade leaves a profound, yet subtle, imprint on Brother Silas's consciousness. It wasn't a frightening experience, not in the least. Instead, it felt like a quiet invitation, a subtle nudge from the universe, perhaps to engage with this new, wild inhabitant of his beloved forest in a way that was uniquely his own. He doesn't rush back to the village to announce his sighting, nor does he immediately change his routines in any dramatic fashion. That simply isn't his way. Brother Silas, as we're getting to know him, is a man of gentle deliberation, of quiet, considered action. You can almost imagine him later that evening, sitting by his single flickering candle, a soft, thoughtful smile playing on his lips as he replays the image of those intelligent, amber eyes in his mind. He's probably not thinking, "Oh dear, a dangerous wolf," but more along the lines of, "Well now, isn't that interesting? A new neighbor, and a rather magnificent one at that." His prayers that evening, and in the days that follow, might take on a slightly new dimension. He continues to pray for the safety and peace of mind of the villagers of Oak Haven, of course, but now he also includes a more specific, more personal intention for the wolf. He doesn't pray for it to be driven away, or for it to be harmed. Instead, he prays for understanding, for a way to bridge the gap between the wildness of the creature and the anxieties of the human community. He prays for an opportunity, perhaps for a different kind of communication, a different kind of relationship to unfold. Many spiritual traditions hold the belief that focused, compassionate intention can have a real, tangible effect on the world, subtly influencing events and relationships in a positive direction. It's not about magically controlling outcomes, but about aligning oneself with a deeper, benevolent wisdom and trusting in its unfolding. Think of the concept of metta or loving kindness meditation in Buddhism, where practitioners systematically send out thoughts of goodwill and compassion to all beings, without exception. It's a practice aimed at cultivating a boundless heart, capable of embracing even those perceived as difficult or threatening. A few days after the silent encounter, Brother Silas feels a gentle prompting, a quiet inner nudge, to make a small, unobtrusive gesture. It's not a grand plan, not a dramatic intervention. It's something simple, something almost humble. He remembers the path the wolf seemed to take as it disappeared back into the denser part of the woods from the sunlit glade, and he knows that wild animals, creatures of habit, often use the same routes, the same familiar game trails, as they move through their territory. So, one morning, after his usual prayers and his simple breakfast, he gathers a small offering. Perhaps it's a portion of his own course, dark bread, a food item utterly unfamiliar to a wild wolf, but an offering nonetheless. Or maybe, with his deep knowledge of the forest, he has access to something a little more appropriate. Perhaps a few scraps of leftover cooked meat from a hare. He might have been gifted by a grateful villager, unlikely, given his simple diet, but let's keep our options open. Or even just a small pile of berries that he knows are particularly favored by creatures of the woods. The exact nature of the offering is less important than the intention behind it. It's a gesture of goodwill, a tentative, unspoken message of peace. He makes his way quietly to the edge of the glade where he first saw the wolf, moving with his usual slow, deliberate pace, making no sudden movements. His presence as non-threatening as possible. He doesn't venture deep into the wolf's perceived territory. He respects its space. He finds a slightly sheltered spot, perhaps at the base of an old, moss-covered tree, a little way off the main deer trail, but still noticeable to a creature with keen senses. There, he carefully places his small offering on a flat stone, or perhaps nestled in a little hollow in the roots of the tree. He doesn't linger. He doesn't try to hide and watch. He simply leaves his gift, and then, just as quietly, retreats, returning to his hermitage and his daily tasks. You can almost see him, can't you, turning back for one brief, thoughtful glance, not with expectation, but with a kind of gentle, open curiosity. Will it be found? Will it be accepted? He doesn't know. He simply offers. It's a bit like sending a message in a bottle, a hopeful, uncertain gesture cast out into the vast, unpredictable ocean of the wild. This act of leaving food for a wild animal, especially a predator, is something that modern wildlife experts often advise against, as it can lead to habituation and a loss of the animal's natural fear of humans, potentially creating dangerous situations. However, in the context of our gentle, somewhat mythical story, and considering Brother Silas's unique, almost spiritual connection with nature, we can perhaps view this act through a different lens. It's not about trying to tame the wolf in the conventional sense, or to make it dependent. It's more of a symbolic act, a quiet, tentative reaching out across the divide that separates their two worlds. Lesser-known stories from various indigenous cultures often describe rituals of offering food or symbolic gifts to animal spirits or to the land itself, as a way of showing respect, seeking harmony, and acknowledging the interconnectedness of all life. These are acts born not of a desire to control, but of a deep reverence for the natural order. He doesn't check on the offering later that day, nor even the next. He allows time and space for whatever is meant to happen. He continues his prayers, his work, his contemplative walks, his mind calm and his heart open. Then, perhaps 2 or 3 days later, his wanderings take him, seemingly by chance though, with Brother Silas. One often wonders if anything is truly by chance. Back towards that same sun-dappled glade, as he approaches, he moves with even greater quietness than usual. His senses alert, his heart filled with a gentle anticipation. He reaches the spot where he left his small gift. The bread, or the berries, or whatever it was, is gone. There's no sign of a struggle, no indication that it was taken by scavengers like crows or squirrels. The area around the flat stone is undisturbed, except for, yes, there, in the soft earth nearby, almost invisible to an untrained eye but clear as day to Brother Silas's experienced gaze, is the faint, unmistakable imprint of a large paw, a wolf's paw. A slow smile spreads across Brother Silas's face. It's not a triumphant smile, but a smile of quiet satisfaction, of gentle encouragement. The offering was found. It was accepted. A tiny, almost imperceptible bridge has been built, a fragile thread of connection established. He doesn't know if the wolf understands the intention behind the gift. Of course, it's a wild creature, driven by instinct and survival, but perhaps, just perhaps, it registers this unusual occurrence, food appearing in an unexpected place, without any accompanying threat, without any trap, without any human presence. Perhaps it creates a tiny, almost subconscious association. This particular area, this particular scent for Brother Silas would have left his own faint, human scent when placing the offering, is linked with something not negative, something perhaps even faintly positive. He doesn't immediately leave another offering. He doesn't want to create a dependency or to make his presence too predictable, too intrusive. He simply takes note of this small, encouraging development and continues on his way, his heart a little lighter, his step perhaps a little more springy. He understands that this is a slow, delicate process, a dance of trust and patience. It's a bit like trying to coax a very shy bird to eat from your hand. It requires infinite patience, absolute stillness, and a profound sense of gentle, unwavering kindness. Any sudden movement, any hint of aggression or impatience, and the fragile connection is instantly broken. Over the next few weeks, he might repeat this gesture very occasionally, always in a slightly different spot along the wolf's presumed pathways, always with the same quiet, unobtrusive care. Sometimes the offering is taken, sometimes it's left untouched, perhaps discovered by other, smaller creatures of the forest. He never sees the wolf taking the food. He never tries to. He simply trusts the process. He is planting seeds, tiny seeds of potential goodwill, in the wild, fertile ground of the forest, and waiting, with infinite patience, to see if anything will sprout. This quiet, unassuming persistence, this willingness to continue offering kindness without any immediate or guaranteed reward, is a beautiful testament to his gentle faith, not just in a divine power, but in the inherent capacity for connection, for some form of understanding, even between beings as seemingly different as a contemplative hermit and a wild, solitary wolf. Many spiritual teachings emphasize the virtue of selfless service, of giving without expecting anything in return. It's seen as a way to purify the heart, to overcome ego, and to cultivate a genuine, unconditional love for all of creation. Brother Silas, in his own quiet, unassuming way, is living out this principle, one small, humble offering at a time. The wild divide is still vast, but perhaps, just perhaps, a single, slender, almost invisible thread of peace has begun to be woven across it. The forest, in these unfolding weeks, seems to hold its breath, watching this quiet, delicate dance between the hermit and the wolf. Brother Silas continues his gentle, unobtrusive offerings, never too frequent, never too predictable. He's not trying to bait the wolf or to lure it into a trap of domesticity. His intention is far more subtle, more akin to a quiet conversation, a series of gentle, unspoken questions offered to the wildness. You can almost imagine the wolf, can't you, encountering these small, unexpected caches of food. At first, there would be immense caution. A wild predator, especially one that has likely had negative encounters with humans, or their scent in the past, doesn't readily trust anything out of the ordinary. Its survival depends on a finely tuned sense of suspicion. So, the first time it stumbles upon Brother Silas's offering, that piece of coarse bread, perhaps, or those few carefully chosen berries, its reaction would be one of intense, wary scrutiny. It would circle the offering at a distance, its nose twitching, testing the air for any hint of danger, any scent of trap or human proximity. Its keen, amber eyes would scan the surrounding undergrowth, searching for any sign of movement, any flicker of threat. This innate caution is a deeply ingrained survival mechanism, honed over countless generations. Many wildlife biologists emphasize that wild animals operate on a principle of risk assessment. The potential reward of food must be carefully weighed against the potential danger of acquiring it. For a creature like a wolf, which relies on its strength, stealth, and intelligence to survive, Any deviation from the norm in its environment is cause for serious consideration. Perhaps the first few times, the wolf leaves the offering untouched, choosing to rely on its own proven hunting skills rather than risking an encounter with something so unfamiliar. So potentially deceptive, Brother Silas, finding his gifts undisturbed, would feel no disappointment, no discouragement. He understands, he is patient. He knows that trust, especially the trust of a wild creature, cannot be rushed. It must be earned, slowly, painstakingly, through consistency and unwavering, gentle intention. It's a bit like trying to befriend a very shy, very wary stray cat. You leave out food, you speak softly, you make no sudden moves, and you wait, sometimes for a very, very long time, for that first tentative sign of acceptance. But then, one day, perhaps driven by hunger after an unsuccessful hunt, or perhaps simply by a growing, grudging curiosity, the wolf might cautiously approach one of Brother Silas's little offerings. It would still be incredibly wary, its muscles tensed, ready to bolt at the slightest sound or movement. It would sniff the food item meticulously, its sensitive nose gathering a wealth of information that we humans can only imagine. It might nudge it tentatively with its muzzle, then snatch it up quickly, retreating a short distance to eat it in a more secure, secluded spot, its eyes still scanning its surroundings for any sign of danger. The taste would be unfamiliar, perhaps even a little strange. Bread, after all, is not part of a wolf's natural diet, but its sustenance, and it came with no apparent cost, no trap sprung, no human appearing to threaten or pursue. This is a crucial moment, a tiny, almost imperceptible shift in the wolf's perception, the scent of the human, Brother Silas's scent, which would inevitably linger faintly on the offering, is now associated not with danger, not with fear, but with food, unexpected, freely given food. This process of association, of classical conditioning, is a fundamental aspect of animal learning. It's how animals learn what is safe and what is dangerous, what is rewarding and what is to be avoided. Brother Silas, whether he consciously intends it this way or not, is slowly, patiently, beginning to recondition the wolf's natural aversion to human presence, or at least to his specific, gentle, non-threatening human presence. As weeks turn into a month or two, the wolf might begin to show subtle signs of this shifting perception. It's not that it's becoming tame, not by any stretch of the imagination. It remains a wild creature, powerful, independent, and inherently cautious, but perhaps its flight distance, the distance at which it will allow Brother Silas to approach before it retreats, begins to subtly decrease. Remember that first silent encounter in the sun-dappled glade? The wolf held its ground, observing him from the far edge of the clearing. Now, if their paths happen to cross during Brother Silas's quiet woodland walks, and they do, with increasing, though still infrequent, regularity, the wolf might not immediately melt back into the undergrowth. It might pause, its amber eyes fixing on the hermit with that same intense, unblinking gaze, but perhaps with a little less tension in its stance, a little less overt wariness. There might be a flicker of recognition, or perhaps just a growing familiarity with this strange, quiet human who seems to wander the forest with no ill intent, who leaves occasional, unexpected gifts of food, and who never, ever tries to pursue or threaten it. There's a beautiful, though perhaps apocryphal, story often told in some contemplative Christian circles about a desert hermit who, through years of patient, silent companionship, so gained the trust of a lion that the great beast would occasionally rest its head on the hermit's lap while he prayed. While our story with Brother Silas and the wolf may not reach such dramatic heights of interspecies cuddling, that might be a bit much. Even for our gently humorous tale, the underlying principle is the same. The power of consistent, non-threatening presence and gentle kindness to slowly erode the barriers of fear and mistrust. Many saints and holy figures across different religions are often depicted as having a special affinity with animals, a kind of peaceable kingdom aura about them. Scholars often debate whether these stories are literal accounts or symbolic representations of the saint's inner harmony and connection with all of creation. Perhaps it's a bit of both. Brother Silas, for his part, never tries to force these encounters. He never calls out to the wolf of sin, never tries to approach it directly. If he sees it at a distance, he might simply stop, stand quietly, perhaps offer a slow, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement, and then, after a respectful pause, continue on his way, or even alter his path slightly to give the creature a wide berth, signaling that he has no intention of intruding on its space or challenging its presence. He is, in essence, speaking the wolf's own language, a language of subtle body cues, of respect for territory, of non-aggression. It's a slow, delicate dance of approach and retreat, of watching and being watched, a silent negotiation of boundaries, and a gradual, tentative building of something that might, just might, one day resemble a kind of understanding, or at least a mutual, wary tolerance. You can almost see them. Can't you? Two solitary figures, sharing the vast, silent expanse of the ancient forest, the hermit, with his quiet prayers and his gentle, unassuming ways, the wolf, with its wild instincts and its powerful, untamed spirit. They are, in many ways, polar opposites, yet they are also, in some strange, almost mystical way, kindred spirits, both choosing a life apart from the bustling, noisy world, both deeply connected to the rhythms and secrets of the wilderness. The wolf, watching the hermit from the shadows, might be slowly, almost reluctantly, beginning to categorize him as something different, not a threat, not a source of easy prey, but something else, something quiet, something harmless, something perhaps even, in its own way, a little bit interesting. The wild creature, for so long a solitary hunter, a king in its own domain, is now experiencing a pause in its ingrained caution, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in its wild heart, prompted by the unwavering, gentle patience of a lonely man who only ever wished to offer peace. The forest watches and waits as this most unlikely of potential friendships slowly, cautiously, begins to take its first, tentative, hesitant steps. The subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the wolf's behavior, that slight lessening of its immediate flight response, that faint flicker of something other than pure, instinctive caution in its amber eyes when it encountered Brother Silas, was not lost on the hermit. He noticed these tiny changes with the same quiet, attentive discernment he applied to the unfurling of a new leaf in his garden, or the shifting patterns of the wind. It wasn't something he consciously looked for, not with an anxious or demanding expectation, but his deep attunement to the forest and its inhabitants made him receptive to even the most nuanced signals. You can imagine him, after one such encounter. Perhaps the wolf lingered a few moments longer than usual at the edge of a clearing, its gaze steady before it turned and melted into the trees, returning to his hermitage with a feeling of quiet, inner warmth, a gentle sense of encouragement. It's like receiving a very subtle, almost unspoken compliment from a very reserved and dignified acquaintance. It means all the more for its rarity and understatement. This growing, albeit still extremely cautious, tolerance from the wolf created a new dynamic in their shared environment. It wasn't a friendship, not yet, not in any way a human would typically define it. There were no shared walks, no playful interactions. Certainly no head scratches or affectionate nuzzles. Brother Silas, for all his gentleness, was probably wise enough not to even dream of attempting such a thing with a creature of such inherent wildness. But what began to emerge was a kind of mutual calm, a fragile, unspoken truce in the heart of the wilderness. When their paths crossed, as they occasionally did, there was less of the initial sharp tension, less of the immediate instinctive predator potential prey or predator potential threat assessment. Instead, there was a moment of quiet acknowledgement, a shared pause in the vast silence of the forest, before each continued on their separate, solitary way. This development of a mutual, if wary, calm is a testament to Brother Silas's unwavering commitment to his peaceful approach. He never varied. He never showed aggression, never made sudden, threatening movements, never tried to encroach upon the wolf's space or sense of security. His presence was a constant, quiet, harmless, and imbued with a gentle, prayerful intention. Animals, especially intelligent ones like wolves, are remarkably adept at learning and recognizing patterns. The wolf, through repeated, non-threatening encounters, was slowly learning that this particular human, unlike others it might have encountered or sensed, posed no danger. In fact, this human was occasionally associated with the unexpected, inexplicable appearance of food. This concept of creating a zone of peace or a circle of calm around oneself through consistent, gentle behavior is something found in various spiritual narratives. Think of Daniel in the lion's den, a story that, whether taken literally or metaphorically, speaks to the power of faith and inner serenity to disarm even the fiercest of adversaries. While Brother Silas wasn't facing a den of hungry lions, the principle of radiating a palpable sense of harmlessness is certainly at play here. You might picture a scene. Brother Silas is meditating quietly by his favorite stream, the water gurgling softly over smooth, mossy stones. The air is cool and still. Unbeknownst to him, the wolf approaches silently from the dense undergrowth on the opposite bank. It stops, observes him for a long while, its head tilted slightly, its amber eyes contemplative. An earlier version of the wolf might have seen this still, unaware human as a potential opportunity, or at least a cause for immediate, wary retreat. But now, something is different. It watches the hermit, absorbed in his peaceful stillness, the gentle rhythm of his breathing, the complete absence of any threatening posture or intent, and after a few moments, instead of bolting, or growling, or even moving away, the wolf might simply lie down. It's not close, certainly not within easy reach, but at a respectful distance, on its own side of the stream, its body relaxed, though its ears remain alert. Still attuned to the sounds of the forest. It's not seeking companionship, not in the human sense. It's more like a shared moment of quietude. Two solitary beings, coexisting peacefully in the same tranquil space, each respecting the other's presence, each absorbed in their own silent contemplation. This would be a profound, almost revolutionary moment. The subtle cues of this emerging mutual calm would be fascinating to observe. Perhaps the wolf no longer immediately flattens its ears or lowers its head in a submissive or pre-aggressive posture when it sees Brother Silas. Perhaps its tail, instead of being held stiffly or tucked between its legs, might occasionally give a slight, almost imperceptible, relaxed wag, not a joyful, dog-like wag, but more of a subtle indicator of reduced tension. These are the tiny, nuanced signals that Brother Silas, with his deep understanding of the forest's language, would notice and appreciate. Lesser-known observations from naturalists who have spent long periods patiently observing wild animals in their natural habitats often speak of these slow, gradual processes of habituation, where an animal, through repeated neutral or positive interactions, learns to tolerate and sometimes even show curiosity towards a human observer. It requires immense patience, a deep respect for the animal's boundaries, and an unwavering commitment to non-interference. Brother Silas, in turn, would continue to offer his own signals of peace and respect, He would never stare directly into the wolf's eyes for too long, as this can be perceived as a challenge in the canine world. He would keep his movements slow and predictable. He might even, on occasion, if he felt the wolf was particularly relaxed in his presence, avert his gaze slightly, a subtle signal of non-aggression, a way of saying, "I see you, I respect you, I mean you no harm." It's a delicate, intricate, and largely silent communication, a far cry from the noisy, often clumsy way humans usually interact with each other, let alone with creatures of the wild. This mutual calm, this fragile truce, would have a quiet, almost imperceptible effect on the surrounding forest. The other animals, the deer, the squirrels, the birds, would still be wary of the wolf. Of course, it is, after all, a predator, but perhaps they too would begin to sense the subtle shift in the atmosphere, the slight lessening of tension when both the hermit and the wolf were in the vicinity. It's a fanciful notion. Perhaps the idea of the entire forest ecosystem subtly responding to this burgeoning, unlikely peace, but in a story designed for gentle relaxation. It's a rather lovely thought to entertain. Imagine the little birds, instead of erupting in frantic alarm calls when the wolf passes, merely falling silent for a moment, watching with a slightly less terrified curiosity. It's a bit like when there's a grumpy but ultimately harmless old character in a village. Everyone knows to give them their space, but there isn't the same level of active fear as there would be for a genuinely malevolent presence. The villagers of Oakhaven, of course, would be entirely unaware of these subtle, silent developments deep within the woods. They would still be worrying about their sheep, still cautioning their children, still occasionally casting anxious glances towards the forest edge. Their fear, though perhaps slightly lessened by Brother Silas's calming words and prayers, would still be a tangible presence in their lives. They wouldn't know about the silent meetings by the stream, the shared moments of quietude, the slow, patient weaving of an invisible thread of peace between the hermit and the wolf. And that's probably for the best. Such a delicate, almost unbelievable understanding would be difficult for them to comprehend, and perhaps even more difficult for them to trust. Their world is one of practicalities, of fences and flocks, of tangible dangers and straightforward solutions. Brother Silas's world, especially in his interactions with the wolf, is operating on a different, more ethereal, more heart-centered plane. Many spiritual paths emphasize the importance of inner work, of cultivating peace within oneself as a prerequisite for creating peace in the outer world. Brother Silas is, in his own quiet way, embodying this principle, and the wolf, in its own wild way, is beginning to respond. The forest is no longer just a place of potential conflict, but a silent witness to the slow, improbable blossoming of a truly unique and deeply peaceful understanding. The progression from mutual, wary tolerance to something resembling quiet companionship is, like all things with Brother Silas and the wolf, a slow, unhurried, and almost imperceptibly gradual process. There's no sudden epiphany, no dramatic moment where the wolf bounds up to the hermit for a friendly greeting. That would be entirely out of character for both of them, and frankly, a little too much like a badly written children's story. Instead, it's a journey measured in subtle shifts, in the slight shortening of distances, in the lengthening moments of shared, peaceful presence. You can almost feel the gentle, patient rhythm of it, like watching a very shy flower slowly unfurl its petals in the warmth of the sun. A process that cannot be rushed, only observed with quiet appreciation. The small, unobtrusive offerings of food, left by Brother Silas with such consistent, gentle care, continue to play their part. The wolf, by now, has likely come to associate the hermit's faint, unique scent not with danger, but with these unexpected, and not unwelcome, little bonuses to its diet. It's still a wild hunter, perfectly capable of fending for itself, but these occasional, easily acquired morsels are perhaps a pleasant, low-effort supplement. More importantly, they serve as a constant, gentle reminder of the hermit's harmless, even benevolent, intentions. It's a bit like leaving a little welcome gift on a new neighbor's doorstep. It's a small gesture, but it can speak volumes about your willingness to foster a friendly, or at least non-hostile, relationship. The real shift, however, comes not just from the food, but from the consistency of Brother Silas's peaceful demeanor. Every time their paths cross, every time the wolf observes him from a distance, it sees the same thing. A calm, quiet human moving slowly, making no threatening gestures, exuding an aura of profound, unwavering stillness. There are no surprises, no sudden shouts, no attempts to approach or confine. This predictability, this utter reliability of Brother Silas's harmlessness, is perhaps the most crucial element in slowly dismantling the wolf's ingrained, instinctual fear. Many animal behaviorists stress the importance of consistency in building trust with animals. If your behavior is erratic or unpredictable, the animal will remain wary, unsure of what to expect. But if you are consistently calm, gentle, and respectful of its space, it may, over time, begin to relax its guard. Gradually, the wolf might begin to appear more frequently in the vicinity of the hermitage. Not right at the doorstep. Of course, that would still be too bold, too out of character, but perhaps it might be seen resting at the edge of the clearing where Brother Silas tends his small garden, watching him with those intelligent, amber eyes from a respectful distance. It might lie there for an hour or more, still and silent, observing the hermit as he goes about his simple, daily chores, weeding his vegetables, mending his fence, perhaps even humming a quiet, prayerful tune to himself. There's no interaction, no attempt at communication, just a shared space, a quiet coexistence. The wolf is not seeking affection, nor is Brother Silas trying to offer it in a conventional pet owner kind of way. It's more like two solitary beings who have found a strange, unspoken comfort in each other's quiet, unassuming presence. Brother Silas, when he notices the wolf nearby, would simply continue with his tasks, his movements calm and unhurried. He might offer a soft, almost inaudible murmur of greeting, something like, good morning to you, forest friend, or perhaps just a gentle nod in its direction, before returning his attention to his work. He doesn't stare at it, doesn't try to engage it directly. He simply acknowledges its presence and allows it to be. This lack of direct pressure, this acceptance of the wolf's need for distance and autonomy, is key. It's a profound form of respect, a recognition of the creature's wildness and its right to choose the level of interaction. There's a beautiful Hasidic tale about a rabbi who was asked how he managed to pray with such fervor. He replied that he imagined he was a humble servant standing before a great king, utterly focused yet profoundly respectful of the king's majesty. Brother Silas's interactions with the wolf have a similar quality of respectful, almost reverent, distance. Sometimes, when Brother Silas sets out for his contemplative walks in the forest, he might find that he has a silent, shadowy companion. The wolf might follow him, not closely, but keeping pace at a distance, moving silently through the undergrowth, a flicker of gray and brown glimpsed occasionally between the trees. It's not guarding him, not in an aggressive sense. It's more like accompanying him, a fellow traveler on the solitary paths of the wilderness. Brother Silas would be aware of its presence. Of course, his senses are finely attuned to the forest's subtle signals. He might feel a quiet sense of companionship, a shared journey. He wouldn't try to call the wolf closer, or to slow his pace to allow it to catch up. He would simply continue his walk, his prayers, his silent communion with nature, knowing that he is not entirely alone. This idea of a wild animal choosing to accompany a human, not out of domestication but out of a kind of elective affinity, is a recurring motif in many folk tales and spiritual stories. It often symbolizes a deep harmony between the human and the natural world, a state of grace where the usual barriers of fear and mistrust have been transcended. You can imagine the scene. Brother Silas walking slowly along a sun-dappled forest path, his staff making a soft thudding sound with each step, and a little way off, moving with effortless grace through the trees, is the wolf, its form appearing and disappearing like a forest spirit, its amber eyes occasionally glancing towards the hermit. Watchful, yes, but no longer with fear or suspicion, perhaps with a kind of quiet curiosity, or even, dare we say it, a nascent form of wolfish affection. It's impossible to know for sure what goes on in that wild and intelligent mind, but the behavior itself speaks volumes. The wolf is choosing to be near. It is choosing to share its solitary world in its own way with this quiet, gentle human. This is a profound testament to the power of patience, respect, and unwavering, peaceful intention. Many spiritual traditions speak of the language of the heart, a form of communication that transcends words and connects beings at a deeper, more intuitive level. It seems Brother Silas and the wolf are becoming quite fluent in this silent, heartfelt dialect. The other creatures of the forest, the deer, the rabbits, the squirrels, would undoubtedly notice this strange, ongoing association. Their reactions might be a mixture of confusion and perhaps a slight lessening of their own fear of the wolf when it is in the hermit's vicinity. If this calm human isn't afraid of the great wolf, if the wolf itself seems subdued, almost respectful, in the human's presence, then perhaps the immediate danger level is slightly lower. It's a bit like when there are two very different, potentially antagonistic leaders in a community who somehow manage to find common ground. Their peaceful interaction can have a calming, ripple effect on everyone around them. The routines that develop are subtle, unspoken. Perhaps the wolf makes a habit of appearing near the hermitage around the time Brother Silas usually tends his garden in the cool of the morning. It might lie quietly in its favorite spot at the edge of the clearing, watching him, dozing occasionally, a silent, furry sentinel. Or maybe, when Brother Silas returns from his longer forest walks, he finds the wolf waiting patiently near the path that leads back to his small stone dwelling, as if to silently welcome him home. These are not tricks the wolf has been taught. They are behaviors that have emerged organically from a growing sense of security, familiarity, and perhaps even a rudimentary form of attachment. Brother Silas, for his part, accepts these quiet gestures of companionship with gentle gratitude, never taking them for granted, always respecting the wildness that still burns brightly within his four-legged friend. He is witnessing, day by day, the slow, miraculous blossoming of a most unlikely and most wonderfully boring friendship. While this quiet, almost unbelievable companionship is blossoming deep within the heart of the forest, largely unseen and entirely unsuspected, the villagers of Oakhaven are, understandably, still living with a certain degree of unease. The initial sharp fear may have dulled slightly, especially since, by some small mercy, there haven't been any new reports of livestock being taken, or particularly terrifying howls splitting the night. But the knowledge that a large wolf still roams the nearby woods is a persistent, low-level hum of anxiety in their daily lives. You can picture them, can't you, still casting those slightly more frequent, worried glances towards the tree line, still keeping their children a little closer to home than they used to, still sharing hushed, speculative conversations over their evening meals or at the village well. Their interactions with Brother Silas, though infrequent, would continue to be marked by a mixture of respect, hope, and a touch of mystified awe. When a villager occasionally ventures to the hermitage, perhaps to bring a small offering of baked goods, a little something more substantial than Brother Silas's usual simple fare, offered out of kindness and perhaps a touch of hopeful piety, or to seek a moment of his calming presence, they wouldn't, of course, See any sign of the wolf? The creature is far too wary of other humans, far too attuned to the scent and sound of anyone other than the hermit. To make an appearance, it would have melted into the shadows long before any villager even approached the clearing. And so, to them, Brother Silas remains the solitary hermit, his life one of prayer and quiet contemplation, seemingly untouched by the wild drama they imagine unfolding in the deeper woods. But then, slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things begin to change in the village's perception. Not because of anything Brother Silas says or does directly in relation to the wolf, but because of subtle, indirect observations. Perhaps a shepherd, nervously venturing a little closer to the forest edge than he has dared to in weeks, notices something odd. He sees Brother Silas in the distance, walking slowly along one of his familiar paths, and then, a little way off, moving with a quiet, almost ghostly grace through the dappled sunlight. He catches a fleeting glimpse of a large, gray form, the wolf. His heart leaps into his throat. He freezes, expecting, well, he doesn't know what he expects. A confrontation, a chase, but nothing happens. The hermit continues his unhurried stroll, seemingly oblivious. And the wolf simply seems to be accompanying him, not stalking, not threatening, but moving in parallel, almost like a silent, furry shadow. The shepherd rubs his eyes. Did he imagine it? It was so quick, so fleeting. He doesn't dare mention it to anyone back in the village, for fear of being ridiculed, or worse, accused of seeing things, or perhaps of having had a little too much of that strong cider at lunchtime. But then, another villager, perhaps a woman gathering firewood near the outskirts of the woods, sees something similar. She spies Brother Silas sitting quietly by his favorite stream, lost in meditation. And there, on the opposite bank, not 10 paces away, lies the wolf, resting calmly, its head on its paws, seemingly at perfect peace. She, too, is initially terrified, convinced she's about to witness something dreadful, but the scene is so utterly tranquil, so devoid of any tension or threat, that her fear slowly gives way to a profound, almost disbelieving astonishment. She watches for a long time, hidden behind a thicket of bushes, her heart pounding, not with fear anymore, but with a strange, inexplicable wonder. She sees the hermit eventually rise, offer a gentle, almost imperceptible nod towards the wolf, and then turn and walk slowly back towards his hermitage. And the wolf, it simply watches him go, then, after a few moments, gets to its feet, stretches languidly, and disappears silently back into the trees. This observation, so contrary to everything she believed about wolves and hermits and the natural order of things, leaves her utterly speechless. She, too, is hesitant to speak of it. It sounds too fantastical, too much like a fairy tale. These isolated, fleeting sightings, initially dismissed as tricks of the light or products of an overactive imagination, gradually begin to accumulate. A farmer, from a high field overlooking a section of the woods, might see the two distant figures, the robed man and the gray animal, moving together through a clearing. A child, chasing a stray ball towards the forbidden forest edge, might catch a glimpse of the hermit sharing his simple lunch with a very large, very attentive, and surprisingly well-behaved dog or so. The child, in their innocence and lack of lupine expertise, might describe it. The stories are whispered, at first, in hushed, incredulous tones. You'll never believe what young Thomas claims he saw. Or old man Hemlock's wife swears on a stack of holy books that the very idea of a saint, or at least a man as holy and reclusive as Brother Silas, having not just tamed, but actually befriended the very creature that has been the source of so much communal anxiety, is almost too much to take in. It flies in the face of all their expectations, all their ingrained fears, This phenomenon of collective wonder and the slow dawning of a new understanding is something that has been observed in many historical and anthropological contexts. When a community is faced with something that fundamentally challenges its worldview, there's often an initial period of disbelief, even denial, followed by a gradual, cautious acceptance as the evidence, however strange, becomes undeniable. Many religious traditions are full of stories that, to an outsider, might seem incredible or even impossible, but for the faithful, they represent profound truths and sources of deep spiritual inspiration. The tale of Saint Francis and the Wolf of Gubbio is a prime example. A community terrified by a predatory wolf is shown, through the saint's fearless compassion, that peace and reconciliation are possible even in the most unlikely of circumstances. The village elders, when these hesitant, whispered reports finally reach their ears, are likely to be the most skeptical, but also, perhaps, the most intrigued. They have lived long lives, seen many strange things, and possess a certain hard-won wisdom. They might gather to discuss these extraordinary claims, stroking their chins thoughtfully, their eyes narrowed in contemplation. Is it possible? Could this quiet, unassuming hermit, with his gentle prayers and his simple ways, have achieved something so miraculous? They might recall ancient legends, half-forgotten tales of holy men and women who possessed a strange and wonderful power over the wild beasts of the earth, a power born not of force, but of profound spiritual purity and a deep, resonant harmony with all of creation. The initial fear and anxiety surrounding the wolf don't vanish overnight. Of course, that would be unrealistic, but it begins to be tempered with a new emotion, a profound, almost reverent sense of wonder. The wolf is still a wild creature, and the villagers are still sensible enough to maintain a respectful distance. But the nature of their fear starts to change. It's less about a menacing, unknown threat, and more about a kind of awe-filled respect for a creature that is clearly not just any ordinary wolf, and for a hermit who is clearly not just any ordinary man. It's a little like discovering that the grumpy, reclusive old artist who lives at the edge of town is actually capable of creating works of breathtaking, transcendent beauty. Your perception of them shifts, deepens, becomes more nuanced. The villagers start to look at Brother Silas with new eyes. He is no longer just the quiet, slightly eccentric recluse. He is now, in their minds, a man touched by something divine. A man who walks with wolves, not as their master, but as their friend. A man who has, through his gentle faith and his unwavering peace, achieved what no hunter's spear, no villager's trap ever could. Their respect for him deepens into a kind of humble reverence. They still bring him their small offerings, perhaps now with even greater devotion, feeling that their simple gifts are being presented to someone truly extraordinary, someone who has a direct line, as it were, to the mysteries of the wild, and perhaps even to the mysteries of heaven. The forest, once a source of fear, is slowly, through the astonishing, gentle example of Brother Silas and his unlikely, furry companion, becoming a place of profound and rather sleepy wonder. The legend of Saint Francis of Assisi and the Wolf of Gubbio is one of the most enduring and beloved tales in Christian hagiography, and it offers a fascinating, though perhaps more overtly dramatic, parallel to the quiet, unfolding story of Brother Silas and his furry, four-legged acquaintance. While our Brother Silas is a much more understated, less demonstrative character than the famously charismatic Francis, the core themes of confronting fear with compassion, of seeking reconciliation rather than retribution, and of the surprising power of gentle, persistent kindness resonate deeply in both narratives. You can almost imagine Brother Silas, in his quiet way, having heard tales of Francis, perhaps nodding in gentle agreement with the underlying wisdom. Even if he'd be far too humble to ever compare his own quiet, almost accidental befriending of a wolf to such a renowned and celebrated miracle, the story of Gubbio, as it's traditionally told, paints a picture of a town utterly terrorized by a large, ferocious wolf. This wasn't just a wolf that snatched the occasional sheep. This was a creature that, according to the more vivid accounts, was attacking humans as well. A veritable medieval monster holding an entire community hostage with fear. The citizens of Gubbio were, understandably, at their wits' end. They had tried everything. Armed patrols, traps, prayers for deliverance. But nothing had worked. The wolf remained a deadly, implacable threat. This depiction of the Gubbio wolf is significantly more aggressive and directly menacing than our Oakhaven wolf, who, while causing considerable anxiety, has mostly confined its activities to inspiring fear and perhaps helping itself to an unattended lamb or two. Our wolf is more of a worrisome, wild enigma than a bloodthirsty terror. Into the scene of fear and desperation in Gubbio steps St. Francis. He, much like Brother Silas, is not a man of weapons or worldly power. His strength lies in his profound faith, his boundless compassion, and his extraordinary, almost supernatural, connection with all of creation when the terrified townsfolk plead with him for help. Francis, with his characteristic fearlessness and deep love for all creatures, even the scary ones, decides to go out and meet the wolf. This is where the drama in the Gubbio story really ramps up. Imagine the scene: the brave saint, accompanied perhaps by a few trembling companions who likely kept a very safe distance, walking out towards the wolf's known haunts, while the rest of the townspeople watch from the safety of their walls, their hearts in their mouths. It's a classic confrontation setup, the lone hero going to face the fearsome beast. When Francis finally encounters the wolf of Gubbio, the creature is, as expected, fierce and ready to attack. It charges at him, jaws agape. A picture of wild fury, but Francis, instead of flinching or drawing a weapon, which he wouldn't have had anyway, simply makes the sign of the cross and speaks to the wolf. He addresses it as Brother Wolf, scolding it gently for its bad behavior, for terrorizing the town and harming both humans and animals. He then, remarkably, proposes a deal. He tells Brother Wolf that if it promises to stop its attacks and live in peace with the people of Gubbio, he will ensure that the townspeople provide it with food regularly, so it will no longer need to hunt out of hunger or desperation. It's an astonishing act of interspecies diplomacy, a peace treaty negotiated between a saint and a wild predator. Many scholars and theologians see this story not just as a charming animal tale, but as a powerful allegory for peacemaking and reconciliation in all conflicts, emphasizing communication, understanding mutual needs, and finding common ground even with those perceived as enemies. The miracle, of course, is that the wolf of Gubbio, according to the legend, understands. It ceases its attack, lowers its head in a gesture of submission or agreement, and even places its paw in Francis's outstretched hand as a sign of pledging its troth to the pact. It's a wonderfully vivid, almost cinematic moment, full of symbolic power. Brother Silas's interactions with his wolf are far less theatrical. There are no dramatic charges, no verbal negotiations, no symbolic paw shakes. His is a much quieter, more internal, more subtly nuanced process of building trust and understanding, a slow, patient erosion of fear through consistent, gentle presence and small, unobtrusive acts of kindness. You might say Brother Silas is practicing a kind of slow diplomacy with his wolf, whereas Francis went for the more direct, charismatic approach. Both methods, in their own way, reflect the unique personalities and spiritual gifts of the individuals involved. After this extraordinary pact is made, Francis leads the now tamed Brother Wolf back into the town of Gubbio. Imagine the astonishment, the sheer dumbfounded disbelief of the townspeople as they see their former tormentor walking meekly beside the saint, its ferocity seemingly vanished, replaced by a strange, almost dog-like docility. Francis then preaches to the assembled crowd, explaining the agreement he has made with Brother Wolf, and exhorting them to uphold their end of the bargain by providing the wolf with food and treating it with kindness. The people of Gubbio, overjoyed and profoundly moved by this miraculous intervention, readily agree. And so, the story goes, Brother Wolf lived for 2 more years in Gubbio, going from door to door for his daily sustenance, harming no one, and being treated with affection and respect by all, even the town's dogs, who, remarkably, never barked at him. When Brother Wolf eventually died of old age, the entire town mourned him, for he had become a living symbol of God's peace and the transformative power of Francis's compassionate love. Now, if we gently place Brother Silas and his Oakhaven wolf alongside this famous tale, the parallels and differences become quite charming. Brother Silas, too, has, in his own quiet way, brokered a kind of peace. He hasn't made a formal pact. There's no communal agreement for feeding, though. His own small personal offerings might be seen as a hermit-sized version of this, but he has transformed the relationship between the wolf and, by extension, as the villagers gradually become aware of their strange companionship, the human community. He has done this not through public pronouncements or dramatic gestures, but through the slow, patient, almost invisible work of building trust, of radiating peace, of simply being a consistently harmless and benevolent presence. His Gubbio moment is not a single dramatic event, but 1,000 tiny, quiet moments of shared stillness, of mutual, respectful observation, of silent, unspoken understanding. The outcome, too, while less celebrated and less public, is perhaps just as profound in its own quiet way. The Oakhaven wolf doesn't become a town pet, going door to door. It remains a wild creature, its wildness respected and preserved, but its presence is no longer a source of terror. It has become, through its association with Brother Silas, a creature of wonder, a living parable of the gentle hermit's extraordinary connection to the natural world. The villagers of Oakhaven, like the people of Gubbio, have had their fear transformed not into sentimental affection for a tame animal, but into a deeper, more respectful understanding of the wild, and a profound reverence for the quiet, holy man who walks in its midst. Perhaps the lesson for Oakhaven is a little more subtle, a little more about coexistence and a respect for boundaries, rather than complete assimilation. Many spiritual traditions teach that true peace doesn't always mean converting the other to be just like us, but finding ways to live in harmony while respecting and even celebrating our differences. Brother Silas and his wolf embody this kind of respectful, boundary-honoring peace perfectly. Theirs is a quiet pact, unspoken but deeply understood, a testament to the gentle strength that can tame not just a wild beast, but also, perhaps even more importantly, the wild fears within the human heart. The echoes of Gubbio are there, but they are softer, more like a gentle breeze than a triumphant fanfare, perfectly suited to the wonderfully boring, deeply soothing world of Brother Silas. The transformation of the wolf, from a shadowy source of village anxiety into Brother Silas's quiet, almost mystical companion, doesn't just alter the villagers' perception of the hermit or the wolf itself. It subtly, gently, begins to act as a living parable for the entire community of Oakhaven. It's not a parable that Brother Silas preaches from a pulpit. Of course, he's far too unassuming for that. He wouldn't dream of pointing to his relationship with the wolf and saying, "Behold, a lesson for you all." That would be entirely out of character. Instead, the lesson unfolds organically, witnessed in those fleeting, astonishing glimpses the villagers catch of the two of them together, and in the undeniable, almost palpable peace that seems to emanate from the forest now. A peace that has slowly, quietly replaced the earlier thrum of fear The primary lesson, and perhaps the most obvious one, is about the power of gentle strength, of compassion over confrontation. The villagers had initially responded to the wolf's presence with fear, and some among them with talk of aggression, hunting parties, spears, and traps. These are, in many ways, the world's default responses to perceived threats. Meet force with force, meet fear with aggression. But Brother Silas chose a different path. He met the wildness of the wolf not with human force, but with a profound, unwavering human gentleness. He didn't try to conquer the wolf, or dominate it, or even to explicitly tame it in the way one might break a wild horse. Instead, he offered it consistent, non-threatening kindness, respect for its nature, and an almost invisible shield of peaceful intention. And slowly, miraculously, the wolf responded. This is a powerful, living demonstration that there are alternative ways of dealing with perceived adversaries. Ways that do not rely on violence or coercion, but on the quieter, more persistent forces of patience, empathy, and unwavering goodwill. Many spiritual traditions, from the teachings of Jesus on loving one's enemies to the Buddhist emphasis on ahimsa, non-harming, highlight this very principle that true strength is often found not in the ability to overpower, but in the capacity for profound, transformative compassion. The villagers, witnessing or hearing increasingly credible tales of the hermit and the wolf coexisting so peacefully, might begin to reflect on their own initial reactions. Perhaps those hot-headed young men who were so eager to form a hunting party might feel a little sheepish now. Their bravado, their talk of spears and arrows, seems rather crude and ineffective when compared to the hermit's quiet, almost effortless success. It's a gentle, unspoken rebuke to the idea that aggression is always the answer. It's a bit like a loud, boastful person being completely outshone by someone who achieves far more with quiet dignity and humble persistence. The contrast speaks for itself. Another lesson the creature's transformation offers is about understanding and respecting the other, even when that other seems alien, frightening, or threatening. The wolf was, to the villagers, the ultimate outsider, the embodiment of the dangerous, untamed wild. Their initial instinct was to fear it, to want it gone. But Brother Silas, through his unique relationship with the creature, implicitly showed them that this other was not just a mindless monster, but a being with its own nature, its own intelligence, and perhaps even its own capacity for a kind of understanding. And if approached in the right way, by befriending the wolf, Brother Silas didn't make it less of a wolf. He didn't turn it into a large, furry dog. He respected its wildness, its inherent wolfness, and in doing so, he demonstrated that peaceful coexistence doesn't require making the other conform to our own image, but rather finding ways to bridge the divide while honoring the differences. This is a profound spiritual insight, applicable to all sorts of human relationships, not just those with furry, four-legged creatures. The ability to see the divine spark, or at least the inherent worth, in those who are different from us, those we might be tempted to fear or demonize, is a cornerstone of many faiths' ethical teachings. There are countless lesser-known folk tales from diverse cultures that feature a human protagonist who, by showing kindness or understanding to a seemingly fearsome or magical creature, receives an unexpected blessing or learns a vital lesson. These stories often serve to break down prejudices and encourage empathy for those outside one's own immediate circle. Furthermore, the story of Brother Silas and the wolf becomes a gentle, living reminder of the interconnectedness of all life and the importance of living in harmony with the natural world. The forest, initially a place of fear because of the wolf, is now, through this strange companionship, revealed as a place of wonder, a place where such unlikely friendships can blossom. It subtly shifts the villagers' perception of their environment. Perhaps they begin to see the woods not just as a resource to be exploited or a potential danger to be avoided, but as a sacred space, a place teeming with life and mystery, a place deserving of their respect and care. Brother Silas, by living so simply and so harmoniously within the forest, and by extending his compassion even to its most formidable predator, becomes a kind of gentle, living embodiment of ecological wisdom. This resonates with the growing awareness in many spiritual circles, and indeed in the wider world, of the urgent need to heal our relationship with the planet, to move from a mindset of domination to one of stewardship and deep, respectful coexistence. The children of Oakhaven, in particular, might be deeply affected by this living parable. Their initial fear of the big bad wolf in the woods would gradually be replaced by a sense of awe and wonder. They might not fully understand the theological or philosophical implications, of course, but they would intuitively grasp the magic, the sheer, delightful improbability of a gentle old hermit being friends with a wild wolf. It would become the stuff of their own local legends, a story whispered with wide-eyed excitement, a tale far more captivating than any imaginary monster. Perhaps they'd even start leaving their own little misguided, but well-intentioned offerings of wilted flowers or shiny pebbles at the edge of the woods, hoping to catch a glimpse of Brother Silas's amazing, furry companion. It's a rather sweet, if slightly problematic from a wildlife management perspective, image, but it speaks to the powerful, positive impact that such a story of gentle strength and unexpected friendship can have on young, impressionable hearts. The transformed wolf, no longer a symbol of fear, but a testament to the power of peace, thus becomes an unwitting teacher for the whole village. It doesn't deliver sermons. It doesn't offer explicit moral guidance. It simply is, in its new, peaceful relationship with the hermit. And that being that quiet, observable reality speaks more powerfully than any words could. The villagers, watching from a distance, learning through hearsay and fleeting glimpses, are gently nudged towards a more compassionate, more understanding, and perhaps a little more wondrous view of the world around them. Their fears have not been conquered by force, but gently dissolved by a living example of peace. It's a slow, quiet revolution of the heart, inspired by a humble hermit and a creature of the wild, a testament to the enduring truth that sometimes the most profound lessons are taught not through grand pronouncements, but through the simple, quiet eloquence of a gentle life, lived in harmony with all beings. The wolf, in its silent, wild majesty, has become Oakhaven's most unlikely and most effective spiritual director. The years that follow the quiet establishment of this remarkable understanding between Brother Silas and the wolf unfold with the same gentle, unhurried rhythm that characterizes everything in the hermit's world. There are no new dramatic events, no sudden crises involving the wolf and the village. The peace, once so tentatively achieved, settles into a deep, abiding reality, a quiet undercurrent to the life of both the hermitage and, to a lesser extent, the nearby community of Oakhaven. You can almost feel the seasons turning, can't you? The fresh, vibrant greens of spring giving way to the lush, sun-drenched fullness of summer, then the rich, golden hues of autumn, followed by the stark, hushed beauty of winter, with the forest floor carpeted in a soft, muffling blanket of snow. And through it all, the quiet companionship between the man and the wild creature endures, a steadfast, unassuming presence in the ancient woods. The wolf, of course, grows older, just as Brother Silas does. Its muzzle might become tinged with a little more gray, its movements perhaps a fraction slower, though it retains its wild dignity and its keen, intelligent amber eyes. It never becomes a pet, never loses its essential wildness. It still hunts for its own sustenance, still roams its territory, still answers to the ancient call of its nature, but its territory now comfortably and often overlaps with the hermit's quiet sphere of existence. It continues its habit of appearing near the hermitage, resting patiently at the edge of the clearing while Brother Silas tends his garden, or accompanying him at a respectful distance on his contemplative walks. These are not scheduled appointments, not predictable routines in the human sense, but rather a natural, unforced pattern that has emerged from years of shared space and mutual, unspoken understanding. Brother Silas, 2 ages with grace. His back might be a little more stooped, his steps perhaps a little more deliberate, but his eyes retain their clear, gentle light, and his spirit its profound, unwavering peace. His connection with the wolf is now an accepted, almost unremarkable part of his life, like the rising of the sun or the changing of the seasons. He doesn't talk about it much. Even if a curious villager should gently try to pry, it's a private, sacred bond, not something to be displayed or boasted about. It simply is. This kind of deep, long-term, interspecies companionship, while rare, is not entirely unheard of in the annals of those who live profoundly solitary lives in close communion with nature. There are accounts from various cultures and spiritual traditions of recluses and mystics who formed extraordinary, lifelong bonds with wild animals. A particular bird that would come to their window each day, a wild deer that would graze peacefully near their dwelling, or, in some more dramatic tales, even larger, more formidable creatures. These relationships often seem to transcend ordinary understanding, rooted in a kind of deep, intuitive communication and a mutual recognition of harmlessness and respect. The villagers of Oakhaven, over these long years, have also grown accustomed to the idea of Brother Silas's wolf. The initial astonishment and hushed whispers have mellowed into a kind of quiet, respectful acceptance. The wolf is no longer a source of fear, but a local legend, a tangible symbol of the hermit's holiness and his extraordinary connection to the wild. They still keep a sensible distance. Of course, they teach their children to respect it, not to fear it in a terrified way, but to admire it from afar, as one might admire a magnificent, but still wild, stag or a soaring eagle. Perhaps the older villagers now tell stories to their grandchildren, not of a scary wolf in the woods, but of the gentle hermit who walks with a wolf, a story told with a sense of local pride and a touch of mystical awe. And if you're very quiet and very good, an old grandmother might whisper, you might just catch a glimpse of them, moving like spirits through the trees. It's become part of the village folklore, a unique thread woven into the tapestry of their shared history. There might be quiet, almost humorous, unspoken understandings that develop. For example, if a villager is walking along a path near the forest and sees Brother Silas approaching in the distance, and then, a little way behind him, catches a glimpse of his gray, furry companion, the villager might discreetly and respectfully step off the paths, perhaps pretending to admire a particularly interesting patch of moss or a curiously shaped cloud, thus giving the hermit and his unusual friend ample space to pass undisturbed. It's a small, unspoken courtesy, a mark of their respect for this unique and, in their eyes, sacred companionship. There's no fear in this gesture, only a quiet deference. This kind of subtle, communal adaptation to an unusual situation is a hallmark of resilient and harmonious communities. They find ways to accommodate the extraordinary, to integrate it into the fabric of their lives without undue disruption. Brother Silas, in his profound simplicity, likely derives a quiet, deep joy from this enduring, unspoken friendship. The wolf is a presence, a silent witness to his prayers, his meditations, his daily life. It asks nothing of him, and he asks nothing of it. Beyond this peaceful coexistence, there's a purity in such a relationship, unburdened by the complexities, the demands, the misunderstandings that can often creep into human interactions. It's a companionship rooted in the present moment, In the simple fact of shared being, many spiritual seekers across traditions have found profound solace and deep spiritual lessons in their interactions with animals, seeing in them a reflection of innocent presence, a connection to a more primal, unself-conscious state of being. The poet Rilke once wrote of wanting to learn from the animals how to be more at home in the interpreted world. Brother Silas, perhaps, has found in his wolf a quiet teacher of just such a profound, uncomplicated presence. Imagine them on a cold winter's day. Snow lies thick and silent on the forest floor, muffling all sound. Brother Silas is inside his small hermitage, a tiny wisp of smoke curling from his chimney, the only sign of life. And there, curled up in a sheltered spot amongst the snow-laden roots of an ancient oak tree, not far from the hermitage door, is the wolf, its thick fur providing ample protection against the cold, its breath misting in the frosty air. It's not inside with the hermit. That boundary has always been respected, but it is close, a silent, watchful guardian, perhaps, or simply a fellow creature enduring the harshness of the season, finding a small measure of comfort in the proximity of the one human it has learned to trust. It's a scene of profound, quiet beauty, a testament to the enduring power of a gentle heart to bridge even the widest of divides. As the years turn into decades, the shared peace between them becomes a legend whispered beyond Oakhaven, carried by traveling merchants or wandering pilgrims who may have heard tale of the hermit who walked with a wolf. It becomes one of those wonderfully boring, deeply soothing stories that people tell on long winter nights. A tale that speaks of a different kind of power, a different kind of saintliness, not one of dramatic miracles and fiery sermons, but one of quiet patience, gentle persistence, and a profound, unwavering love for all of God's creation. Even its wildest and most misunderstood members, the shared peace is not a static thing, but a living, breathing reality, a quiet melody that plays on season after season, year after year, in the heart of the ancient, whispering woods. It's a peace that has transformed not only a wild creature, but also, in its own subtle way, an entire community, reminding them that even in the deepest wilderness, and perhaps even in the wildest corners of the human heart, the seeds of gentle understanding and quiet companionship can, with patience and care, take root and flourish. The story of Brother Silas and the wolf, as the years gently fold one into another like the soft pages of a well-loved, sleepy book, doesn't culminate in a grand, dramatic finale. There's no final heroic act, no sudden, tragic parting. That simply wouldn't be in keeping with the wonderfully boring, deeply soothing nature of their quiet companionship. Instead, their tale, much like their lives, begins to slowly, gracefully, and almost imperceptibly fade into the realm of cherished memory, becoming a lasting legend, a gentle echo in the heart of the forest and in the collective soul of Oakhaven. As both Brother Silas and his wild, four-legged friend advance further into their venerable years, their movements might become a little slower, their quiet routines perhaps a little more circumscribed by the natural limitations of age. The wolf, its muzzle now almost entirely silvered, might spend more time resting in its favorite sun-dappled spots near the hermitage. Its amber eyes, though perhaps a little dimmer, still holding that spark of wild intelligence and deep, unspoken understanding. Brother Silas, his own hair now as white as the winter snow, his frame a little more frail but his spirit as serene as ever, would continue his gentle ministrations, both to his small garden and to his furry, silent companion, perhaps now leaving his small offerings of food a little closer, a little easier for the aging wolf to find. Their bond, forged over so many seasons, needs no words, no grand gestures. It is a deep, quiet understanding, a comfortable, familiar presence in each other's lives. There would come a time, inevitably, when the wolf, one day, simply doesn't appear. Perhaps it wanders off deep into the forest, seeking a final, quiet resting place, as old. Wild animals often do, or perhaps one still morning, Brother Silas finds it lying peacefully in its accustomed spot, its journey in this world having quietly, gently come to an end. There would be no great outcry, no dramatic display of grief from the hermit. His sorrow would be a quiet, deep, and private ache, a gentle sense of loss for a companion who had shared so many silent, sacred moments with him. He might offer a simple prayer, a heartfelt blessing for the spirit of his wild friend, perhaps marking its resting place with a simple pile of stones or a carved wooden cross, a humble, unassuming memorial known only to him and to the whispering trees. This deep, respectful acceptance of the natural cycles of life and death is a hallmark of many spiritual traditions, from the Christian understanding of death as a passage to eternal life, to the Buddhist contemplation of impermanence. There is a profound wisdom in acknowledging that all things are subject to change, to birth, growth, decay, and eventual passing. Brother Silas's quiet mourning would be imbued with this understanding, a gentle letting go, filled with gratitude for the gift of their unlikely, precious companionship. And then, in due course, Brother Silas too would reach the end of his own earthly pilgrimage. Perhaps one morning, the villagers of Oakhaven, noticing the absence of the familiar, thin wisp of smoke from his hermitage chimney, would venture out with gentle concern, only to find him resting peacefully in his simple cot, a look of serene contentment on his aged face, as if he has simply drifted off into a deep, final, and wonderfully peaceful sleep. His passing, like his life, would be quiet, unassuming, and filled with a profound sense of peace. The villagers would mourn him, of course, with a deep, heartfelt sorrow, for he had become, in his own quiet way, their saint, their gentle protector, the man who had shown them the power of peace by walking with the wolf. But the story doesn't end there, because legends, especially those as gentle and inspiring as this one, have a life of their own. The tale of Brother Silas and the wolf would be told and retold in Oakhaven for generations to come. It would become a cherished piece of local folklore, a story to warm the heart on cold winter nights, a gentle reminder of the possibility of peace, compassion, and understanding in a world that often seems filled with conflict and fear. Parents would tell it to their children, and those children, when they grew old, would tell it to their own grandchildren, and with each telling, the image of the quiet hermit and his noble, wild companion, walking together in silent harmony through the ancient, sun-dappled woods, would be renewed, rekindled in the imagination. The hermitage itself might, over time, fall into gentle ruin, the stones becoming covered with moss, the roof slowly yielding to the patient persistence of nature. But the place would always retain a certain sanctity in the eyes of the villagers. Perhaps it would become a quiet spot for pilgrimage, a place where people go to reflect, to pray, to feel a sense of connection to the gentle spirit of the hermit and his wolf. They might leave small offerings of wildflowers or smooth river stones, not in worship, but in simple, heartfelt remembrance. Lesser-known pilgrimage paths around the world often lead to such humble, out-of-the-way places, sites associated with local saints or holy figures whose lives, though perhaps not widely celebrated, touch the hearts of their communities in profound ways. These places often become imbued with a sense of peace, a palpable stillness that seems to echo the spiritual presence of those who once dwelled there. And the forest, their shared sanctuary, would continue to whisper their story, perhaps on a quiet moonlit night. If you listened very, very carefully, you might almost imagine hearing the soft pad of a wolf's paws on the mossy earth, or catch a fleeting glimpse of a tall, gray figure moving silently through the trees, a benevolent guardian spirit watching over the woods that had once been its home. Or perhaps a particularly imaginative child wandering a little too close to the forest edge might swear they saw Just for a moment, an old man with a kind, gentle face, walking hand in paw, metaphorically speaking, of course with a magnificent, silver-muzzled wolf, both of them smiling a soft, serene, and wonderfully sleepy smile. The legend of Brother Silas and the wolf serves as a lasting testament to the enduring power of gentleness, patience, and unwavering, compassionate love. It's a reminder that even the wildest of hearts can be touched by kindness, that even the deepest divides can be bridged by understanding, and that true peace often begins not with grand, heroic actions, but with the quiet, persistent courage to choose a gentler way. It's a story that continues to inspire gentle reverence, a story that still has the power to calm anxious hearts and to lull troubled minds into a state of peaceful, sleepy contentment. Long after the man and the wolf have passed from the world of the living, their spirits forever entwined in the quiet, enduring heart of the ancient, whispering woods. Their tale becomes a soft, luminous thread in the vast, intricate tapestry of faith, a gentle, guiding star for anyone seeking a path of peace in a sometimes noisy and confusing world. And so, as the last golden rays of our story's gentle sunset begin to fade, and the soft, velvety cloak of evening settles over the ancient woods in the sleepy village of Oakhaven, we find ourselves lingering in the quiet echoes of this remarkable and remarkably boring Tale, the legend of Brother Silas and his wolf companion, much like the soft, distant hoot of an owl or the gentle rustle of leaves in a night breeze, continues to resonate, offering a unique kind of solace, a quiet comfort that seeps into the soul, inviting a deep, restful calm. You can almost feel the stillness of the hermitage now, the profound peace that imbued that sacred, simple space, a peace that was strong enough to soothe even the wildest of hearts. The enduring legacy of their story isn't found in grand monuments or learned theological treatises. You won't find Brother Silas's image emblazoned on stained glass windows in mighty cathedrals, nor will you discover lengthy scholarly articles dissecting the precise socio-economic impact of his lupine diplomacy. No, the echoes of their companionship are far more subtle, more intimate, woven into the very fabric of the local landscape and the collective memory of those who heard the tale. It's a legacy whispered on the wind that sighs through the tall pines, a legacy reflected in the clear, calm waters of the stream where the hermit once meditated, perhaps with a certain amber-eyed friend resting peacefully nearby. It's the kind of legacy that doesn't shout for attention, but rather invites quiet contemplation, a gentle turning inward. The gentle echoes remain, first and foremost, in the transformed heart of Oakhaven. The fear of the forest, once a palpable, constricting presence, has long since given way to a deep, abiding respect, a sense of wonder at the mysteries and beauties held within its depths. The villagers, for generations after Brother Silas and his wolf have passed into legend, might find themselves approaching the woods with a new reverence, seeing it not just as a collection of trees and shadows, but as a place where something truly extraordinary, something sacred, once occurred. Perhaps young couples, on a quiet evening stroll, might point towards the distant, dark silhouette of the forest and whisper the tale to each other, their hands clasped a little tighter, a shared sense of gentle awe filling the space between them. This kind of localized oral tradition, where stories are passed down through families and communities, is a powerful way of keeping memory and values alive. Many spiritual traditions place great emphasis on storytelling as a means of transmitting wisdom, ethics, and a sense of shared identity. Brother Silas's story has become just such a foundational narrative for Oakhaven. The gentle echoes also remain in the way the people of Oakhaven might, perhaps, interact with the natural world around them, and even with each other. The living parable of the hermit's compassion, his unwavering commitment to a peaceful path, even in the face of perceived danger, might subtly influence their own responses to conflict or misunderstanding. Perhaps they are a little quicker to seek understanding, a little slower to resort to anger or aggression, a little more willing to extend the hand of friendship, even when it seems difficult or unlikely. It's not that they all become saints. Of course, they remain ordinary, wonderfully flawed human beings. But the seed of that gentle, persistent kindness, so powerfully demonstrated by Brother Silas, has been planted in their communal consciousness, and it continues to bear quiet, unassuming fruit. It's a bit like how a single, beautiful melody, once heard, can linger in the mind for days, subtly influencing one's mood and thoughts. The melody of Brother Silas's peaceful life plays on. And what of the wolves? Perhaps, in the years that follow, another wolf, or even a small family of them, might occasionally be sighted in the deeper, more remote parts of the forest, but the reaction from Oakhaven would likely be different now. There would still be caution. Of course, a sensible respect for wild creatures, but the immediate, paralyzing fear, the instinct to demonize and destroy, might be tempered by the memory of Brother Silas's friend. They might remember that wolves, too, are creatures of God, deserving of their place in the vast tapestry of creation, and that sometimes, just sometimes, bridges of understanding can be built where only fear and hostility seemed possible. This is a profound shift in perspective, a quiet triumph of compassion over ingrained prejudice. Many scholars who explore the intersection of religion and ecology note how sacred stories can reshape a community's ethical relationship with the non-human world, fostering a sense of kinship and responsibility rather than mere exploitation or fear. The most enduring echo, however, is the one that resonates in the quiet spaces of the heart, the one that offers solace, calm, and that gentle invitation to sleepy contentment. The story of Brother Silas and the Wolf is, at its core, a lullaby. It's a tale that soothes rather than excites, that calms rather than agitates. It reassures us that even in a world that can often feel harsh, chaotic, and full of division, there exists the possibility of profound peace, of gentle connection, of quiet, unassuming love that can transcend even the most formidable barriers. It reminds us of the strength found in stillness, the wisdom found in patience, and the quiet miracle that can unfold when we choose compassion over fear. You can almost picture Brother Silas now, in some timeless, peaceful realm, perhaps sitting quietly under a celestial, eternally sun-dappled tree, a gentle smile on his face, and beside him, resting peacefully, its magnificent head perhaps even nudging his hand, is his beloved wolf, its wild spirit now perfectly at home in that ultimate sanctuary. They are together, their quiet companionship unbroken, a testament to a love that was as deep and enduring as the ancient forest they once shared. Their story, like a soft, warm blanket on a cool night, wraps around us, inviting us to let go of our own worries, our own anxieties, and to drift gently, peacefully, into the realm of sweet, untroubled dreams. The gentle echoes remain, not as a loud declaration, but as a soft, persistent whisper, a hum of peace that lulls the world, and perhaps even you, dear listener, into a state of wonderfully boring, deeply restorative sleep. The gentle breeze that rustles the leaves outside your window tonight might just be carrying a faint, far-off echo of that peace, a whisper from the heart of an ancient forest where a hermit once walked with a wolf, and the world, for a little while, held its breath in quiet, sleepy wonder. The story has found its gentle end, much like a quiet stream finding its way to a calm, reflective pool. The images of the sunlit glade, the simple hermitage, the steady, amber eyes of the wolf, and the serene face of Brother Silas begin to soften, to merge with the growing quietude in your mind. The path through the woods is now dim, the light almost entirely faded, leaving only the deep, comforting shadows and the first shy stars beginning to prick the darkening sky. There's a profound stillness, a sense of completion, a feeling that all is well, all is peaceful. The last cricket has chirped its final goodnight. The last breath of wind has sighed through the pines. Everything is settling, just as you are settling, deeper and deeper into a state of profound relaxation, and the story is done. Its gentle work complete. It leaves behind only a sense of warmth, a feeling of quiet reassurance, and an invitation to let go, to drift, to dream. And now, as the gentle cadence of our story fades completely, like the softest of footsteps disappearing down a mossy path into the twilight, allow yourself to sink even more deeply into your comfort. Feel the gentle support beneath you, the soft air around you. Let any remaining thoughts drift away like clouds on a summer sky, leaving only a clear, calm, and peaceful expanse. The forest is asleep now. The village is quiet, and all is profoundly, wonderfully still. May your own rest be just as deep, just as peaceful, just as restorative. End of script. Sweet dreams.